Doug Bryson.
Here.
Steve Griffiths is excused. Bruce Robinson.
I'm here.
Jim Davis.
Here.
And Don Williams.
Thank you. Any agenda changes or revisions?
None. Bruce,
You all,
I'm motioning to Bruce, suggesting he not use the portable microphone, but use the other one.
your fixed mic.
Why? Because I don't think that one's on.
Should be. It should.
Can you hear me now?
It should be on.
All right, thank you. You all had a chance to look over the minutes from November 18th, 2014.
I move motion to accept the minutes.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, so passed. Okay, public comments on non-agenda items or matters not involving a public hearing. Please limit comments to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers should keep in mind that they are being broadcast on live television.
Oh,
Sorry?
they want to ask if somebody wants to.
Yes, anyone care to speak on any non-agenda item at this point? Please come forward, state your name into the microphone, and stay close to the mic, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission and staff. My name is Rich Catlin. I'm a land use planner with Reese & Associates in Albany. I'd like to speak on item 5.2 on your agenda and urge you to adopt the final order to approve the preliminary master plan for Logan Park. That's alternative 3 in your staff memo. I usually don't make an appearance at this stage in the process, but after your November 18th meeting, we learned that the process took an unusual turn. At that meeting, you voted to reopen the public hearing in March. Reopening a hearing is an unusual maneuver, normally reserved for when new information comes to light or if there's some procedural error in the previous hearing. But neither of those occurred in this case. So, after thinking about it, we came up with a simpler solution that solves your dilemma without prolonging the process. And I posed that solution to the city attorney shortly after that meeting, and he agreed to bring it back to you tonight. But let's step back for a second and remind ourselves why we're here. We filed 3 applications and requested concurrent review for all 3. Normally, you process the annexation and rezone applications first, then review the development plan. But in this case, the development plan is the compelling reason for the annexation and zone change. So at staff's suggestion, we requested and you granted consolidated hearings on all 3. And that's the rationale for the annexation and the zone change. That's why it's so dependent on this particular master plan. So on September 2nd, you passed 2 motions regarding Logan Park. In the first motion, you recommended to the City Council that they approve the annexation and zone change. And in the second motion, you directed staff to prepare the final order before you this evening approving the preliminary planned unit development. And in the words of the meeting minutes, you explicitly intended the approval to be, quote, contingent upon the City Council's approval of the annexation and requested rezoning. And that's the end of the quote. So we all agree that the development plan cannot move forward on its own without the annexation and rezoning. They're intricately tied together. So for the final order before you tonight, this evening, it includes that contingency language that you requested. Adoption of the final order approving the preliminary plan unit development is consistent with your direction in September. It will bring closure to this step of the process, and it will avoid the needless time and expense to both the applicant and the city of reopening the hearing. It's a no-risk solution we can all live with. So on behalf of the applicant, I would like to thank staff for following up on our suggestion and bringing this forward to you tonight, and to urge you to approve the final order approving the Logan Park preliminary master plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak on?
Good
evening, Mr. Chair and Planning Commission members. My name is Joan Chambers. I'm an attorney practicing here in Lincoln City, and I've been here for a number of years. My office is at 2210 Northeast 22nd Street, again here in Lincoln City. I agree with everything Rich Catlin said, and I want to comment a little bit further about issues of fundamental fairness and why are these things before you tonight and what is going on with this matter. The applicant and the people who have worked with him were very surprised to see that the staff initiated review of this matter before the Planning Commission and suggested reopening the hearing. We see no basis for reopening the hearing. As Mr. Catlin indicated, it seems appropriate to do an order that the Planning Commission that could adopt that was consistent with this decision after it had the hearings. The city has a process for final recommendations by the Planning Commission for annexation, and in this case, you have the ability to approve the application contingent upon the city actually rezoning, and that's what you originally approved before you were basically advised to reopen the hearing. I saw no notice to the applicant or any of the other participants in the hearing, or no notice to the Planning Commission other than an agenda item. In terms of the four alternatives, I want to be specific and address those. The first alternative is to do nothing, leaving the continuance scheduled for March 3rd. Well, that isn't doing nothing. That is approving a request to reopen the hearing without any notice to the applicant or the other participants in the hearing. Again, there's something that's just a little bit questionable, and nobody, the applicant, the opponents, didn't request that the hearing be reopened. The second one is vote on a motion to reconsider the 11/18/2014 motion for continuance and reopening of the hearing. This gives the Commission the opportunity to vote to continue consideration. Again, why do that? Do not reopen the hearing, adopt the order that's presented in Alternative 3. And I'll get back to that in a little bit more detail. I know there's limited time, so I'm going to try and keep my comments within that framework. The fourth alternative was vote on a motion to reconsider the 11/18/2014 motion for continuance and reopening the hearing, and then to approve a proposed order by staff that the application be denied. And that's the least consistent with what the Planning Commission action was earlier in this proceeding. Voted for approval, and they directed staff to bring back an order consistent with approval. And that's what they have done with option 3. And we would ask that you, in fact, approve option 3, which adopts a final order that's contingent upon implementation with the City Council consenting to the annexation. This is something that the city has done in the past. You can do contingent approvals. The Planning Commission Rules of Order even address questions regarding final recommendations by the Planning Commission if they can't actually make the final order at that time. So again, we would encourage you to adopt the proposed final order that's consistent with option 3 in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Confused here in that 5.1 here.
This is our first discussion item, and they've both spoken to it now, so if there, go on to other public comments, and then we can get back to that.
We have anything that's not related to that? Speak to that, and then we'll open this up and get your comments.
Well, okay.
Yes?
Okay. No, I think they're fine speaking now because it's not really a public hearing later on. Isn't that what you would say?
Sorry, what are we talking?
No, the we have what's called a public forum at the
Right.
beginning of the meeting.
Right.
Which is for purposes of people talking about things that are not on the agenda. They can come in and talk to you about any issue. The problem is that this period of time is being used to talk about things that are on the agenda. If you looked at the cover memo on this, the item of Logan Park, it says very clearly there that no one gets the right to participate in your deliberations, and no one has the right to get up and give you legal advice from the floor. No, basically, but for the fact we have a public forum and we don't,
This is their time if they want to say something, to say something.
well, we don't tackle people to the ground if they start to talk about something that's on the agenda. We just don't do that.
Okay,
But
I
the
just-
fact of the matter is that that period of time is public forum. We just leave it alone. But
That's good.
frankly, when you're ready to consider this item, staff will talk about it.
Okay, I'm just confused, and I apologize for my confusion, but I've got a public hearing sign-up sheet here, and they're all wanting to talk about 5. So,
Well, we haven't gotten to this. When we get to that item, we'll
Bingo.
talk about it.
carry on. Anyone else care to speak before us today about non-agenda items?
I make one comment. I think the city attorney has mischaracterized the item 4. It says public comments on non-agenda items or matters not involving a public hearing. So we're commenting on something that doesn't involve a public hearing tonight. So I think our comments were appropriate. They can be considered for what they were in terms of asking you to do something. At this point in time, you are considering various options that weren't part of what you considered during the public hearing process. Staff has brought you back something. We're commenting on the section on dealing matters not involving with
All
a
right.
public hearing tonight.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay. We go to final orders, resolutions, and written communications. One we have here. Reconsideration of continuance for the Logan Park PUD preliminary master plan. Adoption of a final order approving the preliminary master plan. The Planning Commission on September 2nd, 2014 approved a motion directing staff to draft a final order and findings approving the preliminary planned unit development contingent upon the City Council's approval of the annexation and requested rezoning. On November 18th, 2014, the Planning Commission approved a motion to reopen the record and hearing to be held on March 3rd, 2015, to allow sufficient time for the City Council to act upon the annexation and rezoning request.
Jeff, do you want me to start?
All right, go right ahead.
Okay, I don't have a lot to say that hasn't been said already by Don or the applicants, so I can make this fairly quick. This is the Logan Park proposal, and again, it's for annexation, for rezoning, and for master plan, preliminary master plan approval. So you have already made recommendations on the annexation and the rezoning, and you voted to approve at 3-2 vote to approve the preliminary master plan, subject to being annexed, being rezoned, and also to conditions and a development agreement. So I can talk just a little bit more about the scheduling. The final vote on the final order originally was supposed to be on the 21st of October, but because the applicants had asked for a postponement at the City Council, they had not yet considered the annexation and the rezoning, and so we tabled to November 18th, and then again we tabled on November 18th to March 3rd. The problem with March 3rd is twofold. Applicant is not going to be available March 3rd and would like to be here. And we are going to have basically a new planning commission. We'll have 3 members who have participated in the hearing up until this point. But after this meeting, we won't have a quorum that actually participated. Doug Bryson was not here. He's a current planning commissioner. He was not here to participate in the hearing. So he or anyone, any new member to the planning commission is going to have to bring themselves up to date on all the material in order to vote on a final order. So that is why we are asking you to consider options for this evening other than continuing to March 3rd. In order to do that, Joan Chambers just listed all of these, so I'll just put them up again on a PowerPoint. But you could go ahead and consider the final order on March 3rd. Or if you would prefer to do something different, you will need to vote to reconsider the November 18th motion to continue to March 3rd. And then you have the options of either picking a different date. But again, anything after this meeting would require that Doug and any new members get up to date so that they can vote on the final order. Or you could, after you have voted to reconsider the continuance, you could adopt your final order this evening, and I've included 2 in the packet. One is a final order that reflects what you said on September 2nd, that you wanted to approve subject to annexation, rezoning, and a development agreement. And then number 4 is another option would be just simply to say because it hasn't been rezoned or because it hasn't been annexed, we deny based on the fact it's not in the city and it doesn't have current zoning. So with the last 2, 3, and 4, if you would take one of those actions, then anyone who is unhappy with the action could appeal it, or the city council could call up your decision. And in either case, then the council could consider the preliminary master plan at the same time that they're considering the annexation and the rezoning. So we feel that it's probably beneficial at this point to move ahead and to make a decision one way or the other so that we can move forward and this commission can vote on a final order reflecting their opinions from the public hearing that was held. Do you have any questions about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
At that meeting, we were directed by Attorney Apicello that we could only vote on the first 2 items until the council approved. So from my recollection, we didn't really get that deep in the master plan issue, and I'm not comfortable voting on it at all because we didn't really review it in depth once I heard that. We were told that we could not do that at that time.
Okay.
I'm not sure about what you're saying. During that hearing, I said you could not vote on it?
We had 3 issues, and 2 have to be approved before we were told, the first
Well,
had to
it
be
is
approved
true.
by council before we could approve the 3rd.
I believe that we always left open the option that you could approve it contingent upon.
Did we?
Yeah. Preference would obviously be that the council would have acted by now, and
Right.
that was what we all had anticipated. But it's not wrong to approve with the condition. And of course, once you have a final decision, if the council wished to call it up or an affected party in the neighborhood wanted to appeal to council, that would be a de novo consideration of that matter before the council anyway.
And de novo means you'd basically hold the public hearing again
Yeah.
and review all the
And
information.
when we were here last time, the technicality here is that we need a motion from somebody to reconsider your continuance from November 18th, and then a second, and then you vote on that motion to reconsider, and now then the item is before you again, and you can decide to do any of the 4 options staff outlined. And when we originally came to you and said continue it to, and then we ended up in March, we were just being mindful of the fact that we were going to have a quorum problem here when people left here and went up to the council. So
And we were
that was-
also planning on the public hearing at the city council being on January 26th, and it's still scheduled for that date.
So the technicality is, in order to do something here, someone needs to make a motion to reconsider the November 18th motion that needs to be seconded, voted on, and then you can consider the matter again as if it was before you, like you did on November 18th.
So that is one of the 4 options.
So, after we makes that motion.
But we have 4
Nominated.
choices. We have a motion, we have the choice of motion. I mean, that's my, what's that? Or no motion. So I guess this is the point for discussion.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you. So I guess it's basically just saying, do we want to, and if so, then I'm looking for a motion on number 3, vote on a motion to reconsider the 11/18/24 motion for continuance and reopening the hearings.
I motion that we no longer reconsider, or no longer delay the consideration of this and vote on action in front of us.
Actually, what you need to do is make a motion to reconsider your motion from November 18th.
I motion that we reconsider our motion from November 18th.
All right. I have a motion to reconsider November 18th motion for continuance, and looking for a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. I'm sorry, did I not leave enough time for discussion there?
No, you did not.
I apologize. We got to speak up, guys. Problem is, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. Am I okay discussing still?
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
discuss
all right.
the motion.
Go ahead.
Hey, since I wasn't here on that meeting, I did read the notes in the minutes, and I did have some concerns myself about the traffic situation. And I wasn't content with what was proposed on the traffic, because...
Can I ask, sorry to interrupt, but we're not to the point where we're talking about the project. We have to first bring the issue back.
Yeah, because we can't even get there yet to discuss that.
If you
It
pass the
really-
motion to reconsider, then you can talk about it again.
Stand down for a while.
Yeah, because of the way this one was bundled, we pretty much need to move it forward to get it back.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have a motion and a second on the floor
For reconsider.
for reconsideration of the November 18th, 2014 motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Well, let's get a voice just to be sure. Can I get a roll call on that?
All right. Robinson?
No.
Bryson?
Yes.
Davis?
No.
Cunningham? Long?
Yes.
And Williams?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so we're done with that, right?
No, that was just to bring it back to the
Oh,
table.
that's right, now I got a real, okay.
Now you have the question 1, 2, 3, or 4.
All right, so then upon reconsideration, adopt the final, attached final order which staff prepared at the Commission's prior direction. The final order approves the proposed preliminary master plan contingent on the City Council's approval of the annexation and rezoning. So, discussion? I think we've discussed it enough.
Okay, so now we're open for discussion. Okay, so when I read the notes in the minutes, I was concerned with the traffic pattern, the traffic flow, and the way it was designed to interact. And I just saw too much traffic going in around that area. So I'm just very uncomfortable about the traffic flow in the area. I don't think it's going to be reasonable. I think the applicant made reasonable considerations for the traffic.
I concur.
Please.
We were basically, we considered the fact that they were building a traffic circle at that pivot corner. That was part of the plan that we were approving. And their entry wasn't going to be off of Logan Road, it was going to be off the side street and then feed into that traffic circle. And that's how we were seeing the traffic handled from that. I'm not sure if you see that in the way the
Well, I
plan
wasn't assuming, I knew the discussion about the fire trucks get around the traffic circle. They'd have to jump over the curbs. That was fine. I went along with that idea. But it's still the volume of traffic coming in and out on Logan Road, I just think is going to be, more than reasonable for the area. We already have issues at the light, with not getting passage from cars that want to make a left-hand turn from Logan Road onto Highway 101. That sometimes you'll have to wait 2 or 3 times for the signal to let you go. So I just have real considerations that are not favorable to the traffic flow.
So if I had a question, I mean, wouldn't that relatively preclude any north of Logan Road and north? I mean, the entry point, and that would pretty much say that hardly anything could be developed up there unless we can food system. Kind of discussed that before we voted on it. Seem to minimize, I'm not sure if it's accurate, but they minimize the amount of impact. Sound like a lot of impact from that development itself. But
no, I agree with you. There isn't a lot of impact from that development itself. We're only talking about roughly, if I recall, 11 trips per day out of that neighborhood. But a change to a mini traffic circle significantly affects the traffic coming up from the Roads End neighborhood that has a lot more than 11 trips per day. I also agree that it probably adequately covers the emergency traffic and so forth. But we're also considering the possibility in some distant future of opening up Salice to the neighborhoods up in that area. So we'd be adding traffic coming in from Salice down to Logan Road, and some even distant possibility of extending Logan Road. Putting a mini traffic circle there seems to me like a bad idea.
so would you like I guess, the development without a traffic circle? Is that what you're?
I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm just the term mini traffic circle. I've been through a lot of mini traffic circles, and I'm agreeing with Doug here that seems like a bad idea. I don't know what's a good idea. Maybe a full 4-way stop or something like that.
Well, I was in Bend over last week.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
I need to remind you all that the record's closed, the hearing's closed, so we don't want to bring in outside evidence into your deliberations. Remember, you did take you passed a motion that tentatively approved the annexation, the comp plan change, the zoning change, subject to a development agreement that incorporated this plan and all the conditions. And then you made the second motion to tentatively approve the plan development with all the conditions, and then it's subject to the approval of the annexation and the comp plan change. You can change your mind, okay, because it was only a tentative oral decision, but in having this discussion, you need to limit yourself to the record that you had.
On the other hand, this was a pretty vague discussion we had when we talked about it in the first place. The mini traffic circle, as an example, was one of the options that might come about. Now it seems like that thing is getting harder, a more firm. I just don't
in terms of
that way.
In terms of the conditions of approval, yes, in fact, I believe that the minutes, which were referenced earlier, specifically said including but not limited to the traffic circle. Right. So that was approved as part of that second motion, it specifically referenced the traffic circle.
So what options do we have going forward to readdress the traffic aspect of this thing in the future?
Well, if, again, the hearing's closed, the record's closed, the only reason staff had indicated that we could reopen the record was because we weren't going to have a quorum of people that had considered the item. So with those limitations, if the council considered this, either through an appeal, either by the applicant or by an opponent, or through the call-up process, then the council would have a de novo hearing as if nothing had gone before, and so new evidence would come in before the city council. The city council is kind of in limbo right now. The city council can't have that de novo hearing because you have not taken final action.
Right.
So you need to take final action in order to get it to the council for that de novo hearing to occur. And that means either an approval or a denial. Now, I'll tell you, only once in the 20-some years I've been practicing local land use have I ever seen a city council or county commission, in this case, when it was a county commission, that reversed itself between the tentative oral decision and the final decision, the written decision. But it is possible to do that. So, but you need one or the other in order for this thing to move forward.
Right, and that, because we were in we had an odd set of circumstances, it was really one of these things where we need to send it forward, because nothing's going to happen if we don't send it forward, because it's got to get to them to be deliberated, because of the different components.
If it wasn't for these scheduling problems and so forth, we would essentially say, we can't vote on this because they're not
It would have been a done deal.
We can't vote on this because it hasn't been annexed. So we have a scheduling problem that's forcing us, I think, into a very uncomfortable circumstance.
Well, I'm not uncomfortable. I'm good voting the same way I voted last time. I don't have a problem with sending this forward to City Council.
Now, this is just the PUD we're talking about. We're not talking about annexation.
Yeah, and we've given you both options. Obviously, you have an order for approval, and you have a very short order for denial. And you also have the option to try to reopen the record and continue this. But again, there's, it'll interfere with the city council.
I think it's just time that this does move forward. And I understand that's not the greatest reason on the planet, but this is going on and on and on, and we did make a decision. And
only to approve the annexation and the rezoning, not the PUD. I'm comfortable with forwarding that forward again.
Well, your motions were to recommend the annexation and the rezoning.
Right.
The preliminary master plan typically would be the Planning Commission's decision to approve, so it wasn't a recommendation. But in this case, the motion was to approve it contingent on the annexation and the rezoning, and then also on the conditions in the record and a development agreement.
Yeah, and if the council decides not to approve the annexation or the comp plan amendment and rezoning, then obviously your approval, the condition subsequent, would never take effect. So it would be ineffective.
And if the council decided not to call this up and no one appealed, this would be the final decision on the preliminary master plan. Or March 3rd.
We actually asked for quite a few conditions in that adjustment to the plan, including the traffic circle being required, sidewalk required on Logan Road, structure being built that at their cost. There were considerable amount of conditions to be attached to their PUD.
Staff held a site plan review with the applicant, and the results of that are also in here. Staff made comments that typically might be considered for conditions of approval. Your motion probably could be clearer that your approval be based on those as well, just to make sure. When we discussed it at the last meeting, we talked about how that would become part of the development agreement.
So they don't have the effect of being part of...
Well, you could just clarify that if you want in your final order, to make sure that everything is included, that you want to have be part of the development agreement.
So did I understand correctly then, that intersection on Logan Road and the new one that's coming in, there's only going to be 11 trips per day going through that intersection?
No.
Additional.
No, and there was a mistake in, well, no, actually, yeah. What the 11, I think, that you're referring to is that in their traffic study, they said if it was developed to the county R1A standards, you could get 60 single-family units in there. And if it was developed according to the plan that we have been presented with, then we would have 71 units. And that's the difference, in the 11-unit difference. But, yeah, but you would, for 71 units, typically you might have 10 or 11 trips per day based on, for each unit, so.
So what we're saying is, it stays in the county.
I beg your pardon?
Well, it's in the county now.
Right.
And so it can be developed within the county. So if we bring...
It really can't be developed within the county. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Yes.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yes.
No.
So I just want to just clarify that if you continue the matter to next year, then we'll just have this discussion next year. But with a new council or new commission, that would have to, and at least some of you would have to review the entire record. If you deny this if you approve the final order number 4, I guess, that denies it, then for sure the applicant will likely file an appeal and have a de novo consideration of this matter before the city council. And if you approve it, as your original motion, a tentative approval, if you follow through with that, then it's quite possible that the city council would call it up so that they could have a de novo consideration of this matter before them, concurrent with the annexation, comp plan amendment, and rezone, and development agreement. So either way, it won't end here.
Right. Any more discussion? Okay, so we are at, upon reconsideration, adopt the attached final order which staff prepared at the Commission's prior direction. The final order approves the proposed preliminary master plan contingent upon City Council's approval of the annexation and zoning. So I'm looking for a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to adopt the attached final order with staff's prepared at the Commissioner's prior direction.
What is...
Number 3, basically.
Yeah, basically number 3.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Let me ask a question. This is a motion to approve the final order denying...
The final order approves the proposed preliminary master plan contingent on the City Council's approval of the annexation and rezoning. We're just basically saying we're going to approve what we approved.
We're approving basically what we've stated earlier when we did this. Upon the City Council's not changing anything except what we recommended to staff to change. Staff changed that, and so now I'm saying approve that upon City Council either annexing or not annexing or whatever.
Right.
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Opposed. I'm going to sit this one out.
Okay, well, let's have a roll call, please, just so it's clear.
Sure. Cunningham?
Aye.
Bryson?
No.
Long?
Yes.
Davis?
No.
Robinson?
Abstain.
And Williams.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries, I guess.
Thank you. Well done, guys. I like that.
Can we have a statement as to the abstention?
Yeah, I'm just not understanding.
Better lean in there, Bruce.
Final order 2015-05 denying the application. What does that mean?
Denying the plan development application. That would be a reversal of the prior tentative approval.
Well, that's what the final order was. We just voted.
We had
Oh.
two final orders in there.
Oh.
There was another one that basically was,
Yes. We're adopting what we adopted.
Yes.
Jesus Christ, guys.
So just,
I just wanted a clarification.
yeah, and then we, are there no, was Commissioner Davis?
Yes, but
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, just a quick thing.
I think prior time was a 3-2 vote, and I was a no at that time.
So I believe that the last time it was adequately explained in the minutes.
Right.
That I believe it was the overabundance of residential lots. I believe that was the summary of most of the objections the last time.
Based on the annexation part, but this is just a PUD, which is totally different subject.
Yeah. Well, but since you're recommending against the annexation,
We just
it
approved
didn't
all
have the
three.
prerequisite approval was the point. Is that fair to say for everybody?
Yes.
Good? Real fine. Okay, now we're to public hearing 6.1, CPA/ZZ 2014-03, Vacation Rental Zone VR for the Northwest Quadrant. A city-initiated proposal to rezone 340 tax lots totaling approximately 57.5 acres, which are now zoned single-family residential R15, to a newly created comprehensive plan and zoning designation of Vacation Rental District, VR. These properties are located in the northwest quadrant of Lincoln City. The Vacation Rental District is a mixed-use zone which will permit vacation rental dwelling, VRD, use without the restriction of the existing accessory use limitation applicable to residential zone. Script on that one.
There is a script.
Sure there is, but I'm in this pile of paper. Yeah. There it is. Thank you. Okay, it's 6:44 p.m. The public hearing is now open for file CPA and ZC 2014-03, proposed rezoning of proportions of the northwest quadrant of Lincoln City to the recently enacted vacation rental VR zone. The city-initiated proposal is to amend the comprehensive plan map and zoning map. Did I just read all that? I think I just did. Okay. The Planning Commission's role in this legislative process is to consider any written or oral comments or testimony, as well as information from staff, and make a recommendation to the City Council, who will hold an additional public hearing. The City Council may adopt the Planning Commission recommendation, may adopt a different recommendation, or may take other action, including declining to make a decision. Further, some may argue that this procedure or parts of it are quasi-judicial. If you believe these procedures are quasi-judicial in character, the following procedural safeguards apply. The substantive criteria that apply to this hearing include the statewide planning goals, comprehensive plan, and the applicable provision of the city's zoning ordinance. Testimony, arguments, and evidence should be directed to these criteria or to other criteria that you believe apply to the subject of this hearing. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. Before the staff presents a report, I'd like to summarize the public hearing procedures which have been adopted by the City Council. A brochure outlining these procedures is at the entrance to City Council chambers. The staff will present a report and respond to any Planning Commission questions. After that, any person may speak for up to 3 minutes. If the Planning Commission has questions, your time responding to any questions will not be counted in your time limit. If you wish to speak, please write your name and mailing address clearly on the sign-up list at the entrance. It is important that you provide your correct mailing address in order to receive notice of a final decision. Please speak directly into the microphone and begin by stating your name only. If you also have written testimony to submit into the record, please provide a copy to the recorder. Commissioners, are there any abstentions or qualifications based on a conflict of interest, personal bias, or ex parte communications?
Building.
I should note that I live inside the accepted zone that we have outlaid.
Okay. And?
Just making it noted that I live inside that.
Not going to be not going to influence your decisions?
No.
Okay.
I am currently building a home in the same area, so it wouldn't influence my decision.
Okay. And I have nothing in that area, though I am a VRD holder. So just want to make that clear, and that's not going to affect my decisions on this in any way.
We're saying northwest quadrant. Are we saying every piece of the northwest quadrant? I believe I live inside the northwest quadrant also, but I have a commercial zone property, so I guess it doesn't apply to me.
Any problem? Okay.
Does everybody live?
No, ex parte. President who wishes to challenge the authority of the Planning Commission to consider this matter. Will the staff please present its report?
Okay. I want to delay just 1 second. See if our city attorney has something to say at this point.
So what's the issue? Sorry.
Commissioner Bryson said he lives within the northwest quadrant? No?
No, but I live inside the VRD.
We have a planning commission rule that says if you're within 250 feet,
If you're within the notice area.
you're basically disqualified from participating under the planning commission rules. So if you received a notice under your own rules, you're deemed to be biased. Now, that's not the rule in Oregon.
That's not quite the case, because we send out more notices than are required.
If you're within the notice area, not just if you received a notice. So if you're within the notice area and you received a notice, under your rules, these are the planning commission rules, you're excluded from participation. That's not the rule in Oregon for just owning property within a specified distance of, it's not an actual conflict of interest under the Oregon Chapter 244. And basically, if you're just one of the people that's impacted by a rezoning, you're in a class of people that are similarly affected, and that takes you out of the conflict of interest statute. It's called the class exemption. So normally, that's not the case, but my understanding is you have a rule and that one of you lives within the notice area.
Well, let me requalify.
Am I wrong?
Okay, so for the purpose of this matter, none of our current planning commissioners live within the area proposed to be rezoned or within 250 feet of the area proposed to be rezoned.
Okay, it's actually another item on the agenda that one of you lives within
So, for the purpose of
notice
this,
area.
the northwest quadrant.
Okay. So if no one lives in there, then everybody's okay. So just being close by means you're similarly situated, you don't not have an actual conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard. All right. This is sort of one of the culminating steps to what you all know has been a long process relating to vacation rentals in Lincoln City. For the last several years, there's been growth in the number of vacation rental dwellings within the city, and there's been concern on the part of some people about possible effects on the neighborhoods that they're in. As a result of that, the council retained the services of a consultant who convened the VRD Consensus Committee. And they held a number of meetings, produced 20 different recommendations, and one of which was to, actually more than one of which was to create an area, a zone where vacation rental dwellings were allowed, and areas where vacation rental dwellings are not allowed within the R1 zone, the existing R1 zone that we have in the city now. through a long process of earlier hearings, there were different ideas put forward, some concerns raised, and this is the culmination of that. What we're doing tonight is proposing the rezoning of some of the R1 zone area in the northwest quadrant to the newly created VR, or Vacation Rental Zone. As you know, the VR zone is essentially identical to the existing R1 zone, with one difference, and that being that vacation rental dwellings are an allowed outright use in the VR zone, where they're just an accessory use in the R1 zone. The difference being that as an outright use, there would be an unlimited number of nights that a vacation rental dwelling could be offered for rent in the VR zone, compared to in the R1 zone. It would be just for an incidental and subordinate number of nights. This rezoning applies only to the R1 zone, R15. It doesn't apply to Rhodes End. We know that's in the northwest, partly in the northwest quadrant, because Rhodes End, as part of the settlement of the lawsuit relating to the annexation of Rhodes End, there was a 5-year period before the city could promote any or propose any rezoning of Rhodes End, and we're still within that 5-year period. It doesn't apply to commercial zones. It doesn't apply to the multifamily zone, the RM zone. And the question might be raised, why not include some of the RM zone? And given that, as shown on this map, this is part of the northwest quadrant. The brown area is multifamily, and it's basically west of Inlet between 6th and 12th. If you look, you can see in this aerial photograph, the exact same area as the map. You can see that there's a lot of single-family homes there. If you're looking at the rooftops, so there's the zone and there's the area. As I said, there's a lot of single-family homes. A number of our RM zoned areas consist principally of single-family homes. But a concern is that if we rezoned the RM zone on the city's initiative, rezoned any of the RM into the VR zone, that would amount to a downzoning, which could give rise potentially to claims for taking. Because in the VR zone, you're allowed to have single-family homes, which you're allowed in the R1, but you're also allowed to have multifamily homes. Also, the VR zone, or the RM zone allows greater lot coverage for a single-family home than the R1 zone does. So there's some other differences, but the main concern is that there would amount to rezoning. Now, a solution to that, if someone who has a single-family home in the RM zone wants to be in the VR zone, they can always apply for it. Just as anybody can, anybody in the R1 zone, but if a property owner applies for it, then there's no issue of it being a taking or a downzoning because they're asking for it. So within the northwest quadrant, there's actually a fairly limited area of R1 zoned property. It's the orange area here. You can see it's this. I've divided this into two areas. There's this orange area here. To orient you, this is Highway 101 coming down through here. This is where Safeway is, Logan Road running up out of the top of the picture here. The casino near this cul-de-sac is here. This cross-hatched area is sort of reddish, is the RC zone, Recreation Commercial Zone. It's basically a motel zone. It's the kind of uses that are expected there. The red is general commercial. So we have general commercial along Highway 101. We have recreation commercial along the ocean in the bottom part of this slide, recreation commercial to the north. And again, this orange area is R1, and the other half of the area of the northwest quadrant, again, is to the west of Highway 101. We have a little bit more of the R1 zone. We have some RC zone. Then these three zones here is part of the Ocean Lake Plan District. They're all commercial zones. Then some RM zone, general commercial, and then down to the river, some recreation commercial zone. So it's a relatively small area of single-family residential property within the northwest quadrant. Here it is all in one piece, just so you can see it. Again, the orange is the R1. We have general commercial in red, recreation commercial, and some RM adjacent to it. In developing a proposal for the rezoning into the VR zone, the staff considered a number of factors, what the consensus committee had to say, what the public response to that was in earlier hearings on the consensus committee proposals, proximity to attractions, principally the beach and the casino, and proximity to commercial zones, and then topography, which basically was a substitute for the potential for views on the property. The consensus committee recommended again, what we call the yes and no zones. And the green on here is what they proposed for the yes, and the red is the no. Again, Highway 101 is coming down through here, so we're really just to the west or left of Highway 101 is the area that we're concerned about here. There was, zooming in on a little bit, you can see again up here to the north at the top of it, that's where the RC zone is. This is zone commercial, also RC along the ocean, sort of in the middle of this. There's general commercial along the highway, so it's the green was what they proposed for yes, and the red or sort of pinkish color was what they proposed for no. The proposal from the consensus committee was that the yes area would be absolutely yes, unlimited number of nights, and the no area, or the red here, would be absolutely no, there'd be 0 nights. What the council has adopted is in terms of what would happen in an area not zoned VR is a little bit different from what the consensus committee proposed, because there would be an allowance within the no area for use, for accessory use as a vacation rental dwelling. This was the main area of their proposal. They came fairly far east, basically in line with Neptune Avenue, and along the ocean front and so on. Their public comments suggested a number of changes. One was this area outlined in yellow. There was a suggestion that actually all be no. That, in other words, that the yes zone be much smaller than what the consensus committee suggested. A slightly different proposal was also to eliminate some area. Again, this area in yellow, or outlined in yellow, was a smaller area than the earlier proposal. Then there was a proposal to add this area outlined in yellow to the yes zone, take it out of no and put it into yes. And similarly for this area on the west side of Keel Avenue between 21st and 25th, to have that go out of no into yes. So those were So we have the consensus committee, we have some public comments that we looked at. This may be hard to see, but this is just a topographic map. I'm just showing, we looked at topography to think about where it made sense for vacation rentals. So the staff recommendation, you have the map, and this is a little bit sort of faded, but the blue area on here is the area proposed in the staff recommendation to be rezoned from the R15 zone into the VR zone. There's 340 lots in that area, about, I think it's a little over 54 acres. Closing in a little bit on it. In the northern part, one way it's different from the consensus committee is that the consensus committee did not include all these lots along the northern part, and staff is recommending those be included in the VR zone, principally because of the fact that they're adjacent to this recreation commercial area immediately to the north of them. And then also moving the eastern line of the VR zone a little bit further to the west, a couple blocks further to the west, up in this northern part, but coming a little bit further to the east as you get down further south, and again, just going on further to the south. One area that we did not propose in the original proposal to be rezoned from R15 to the VR zone is this area south of Northwest 21st Street. I have had conversations with people who own property there who do want to be included in it, and to some extent there was an oversight on staff's part. You can see that it has commercial zoning on three sides of it, recreation commercial to the west and south, and then general commercial on the east side. It's separated from the other part of the R15 zone by 21st Street, which makes a pretty good divider. So you may want to consider including some or all of that. And to show you again, it's all single-family homes there. There is commercial development adjacent to it, and I can go back and forth between them so you can see it's the area that we're talking about. What we're asking you to do tonight is to make a recommendation to the City Council on the proposed rezoning. There's just the one thing for this one. So,
quick question though. I don't have this bottom half. I'm missing what you just showed. It's not on my.
There it is.
It's not in my packet.
Pardon me?
It's not in my packet. I've got nothing. That what you just.
Well, it does run off the bottom of the map a little bit. It's true. Again, I'm saying, because it was a bit of an oversight. You have some of that area immediately south of 21st Street, right at the bottom of the map you have in front of you. But it's not, the... What color
is that?
Pardon me?
What color is that now?
It's orange on there. I'll show you what, so if this is what you have in front of you right now. If you look at...
Ink and yellow here.
It's right here. So this area right down here at the very bottom.
Art, but I'm seeing two different colors between here and what's up there. So I'm just trying to...
What's in your packet should be the same as what you have in your hand.
Yes.
Shade of orange. Okay.
Yeah, it's probably just the way it's reproduced.
Fair enough.
And this is just a stronger orange here. It's zoomed in more.
Okay.
So, Richard, right now, that area that we're talking about does have existing VRDs in them that are grandfathered in. Is that correct?
They're grandfathered in as accessory uses, yes.
And do you know off the top of your head what proportion of those are in the proposed area?
Are in the what area?
So how many housing units do we have in there that could be VRDs, and how many housing units do we have that are VRDs?
There's 340 lots, so conceivably you can have 340 single-family homes there, 340 VRDs potentially if they all were VRDs. I don't have a figure in front of me on how many are in that area now, but it's a substantial number. There's I want to say there's 360 outside of Rhodes End, somewhere around that number. Maybe it was slightly smaller, 320 outside of Rhodes End, and a substantial number of them are in this area. Again, I don't have the...
And the 360 takes in all of Lincoln City that we're...
Right.
Okay. And a high percentage out of that 360 are in this northwest quadrant.
A fairly high percentage, more than a quarter of them. In other words, like the northeast and southeast quadrants don't have very many. The southwest quadrant has a lot, probably has the highest proportion. But the northwest has a fair number too.
Quick question. Down zoning. This is the first time I've heard this word. Can you explain to me in the RM, down zoning?
Down zoning is more restrictive. In other words, when you down zone a property, you put more restrictions on it, so you put more limitations on the uses that are allowed on it. So with the RM zone, allows single-family homes just as the R1 zone does, but it also allows multifamily.
Right.
The R1 zone does not allow multifamily, so it's...
But a VR overlay wouldn't change that at all.
VR it's not an overlay, it puts it in a new zone.
New zone, okay.
And the VR zone would not allow, or the VR zone does not allow multifamily dwellings. So if you took RM zone property and put it into the VR zone, there would be fewer uses allowed. Pardon me?
It would be non-conforming.
Well, I'm not talking about existing vacation rentals. I'm talking about in the future, or about future uses. So now in the...
We're only looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lots. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lots. Do they all have homes on them now? I'm looking at this here on 6, this little island here that's being preserved, and I'm just curious.
I don't have exact figures.
What difference is it going to make?
There are a number of single-family homes there. The property owners could, someone could come to that area and convert those properties. They may make an economic decision, and what they want to do is build apartments there, buy the properties, build apartments. In other words, assemble enough to make it worthwhile. Mm-hmm. If it goes into the VR zone, those properties could not be used for multifamily homes. So conceivably, it's reducing the value of the property because it's restricting the uses that could be, adding more restrictions to the uses that could be allowed on that property.
Okay.
I guess I want to emphasize that if the owner of RM land, okay, who right now, they can build apartments, if they want to request a rezoning to VR because they don't ever want to build apartments, they could request to be rezoned to VR. So that option's there for them. It's just that the city wasn't going to take land that's zoned that you could build apartments and change it to VR, and now they can't build apartments.
Thank you.
That RM zone, vacation rentals that are already there, is there going to be insubordinate to only 90 days?
Well, 30
days or whatever it is?
Vacation rentals, existing ones that are there,
yes,
are, just as they are in the R1 zone, are approved as an accessory use, so incidental and subordinate. There is no specific number that we've attached to that. if someone, under the existing ordinances that have been adopted, if somebody in the RM zone applied now for a vacation rental, they have a couple of avenues they could go down. One is expedited process where they could get 30 days, and then they don't have to go through the land use process. It just goes straight to license. The other is going through the normal land use process where then they get some number of nights that is accessory, incidental, and subordinate to the primary use. And it would be up to them to demonstrate what that number would be. I know there's confusion out there. People say that you can only get 30 days, and that's not the case. There's an expedited process for 30 days. There's the normal process for some number different from 30.
And for existing VRDs, the administrative allowance says if you want to agree to 180 days as part of a settlement, then you won't have any enforcement action taken against you.
Yeah, so existing ones...
And that was actually your recommendation.
Right.
Yeah, could get 180 days, or another option they have is to approve that they're entitled to some different number. But and that's for existing ones. So being in the RM zone doesn't mean you can't get a vacation rental. If people want to be in the VR zone, they're presently zoned RM, they want to be in the VR zone, they can apply for that.
Richard, when they did the initial consensus report, we had the committee set up for that, they wanted to keep the VRDs to the west of Highway 101, and pretty much we stayed with that pattern. So if I believe I'm correct, the TAP area, everything west of Highway 101 is part of a VRD?
In commercial zones, vacation rental dwellings are allowed outright now, like Taft Village Core Zone is commercial, so they're allowed an unlimited number of nights in Taft. Same thing in general commercial, in the recreation commercial. There is no VR zone in the southwest quadrant yet. That's the next step. This is just the first step that we're doing. We're doing northwest quadrant now. Southwest will be the next one.
Why aren't we looking at them both together then, if they have the same parameters? I mean, I remember correctly that everything to the west of Southwest Coast Avenue was going to be in VRDs.
No, it wasn't that simple. And the reason that we've broke it up was so that we wouldn't be talking about the whole city at once and have multi-hour hearings.
But wasn't that part of the recommendation, that we keep everything to the west, Southwest Coast and the southwest section as a VRD, and everything to the east?
Again, it wasn't quite that simple.
But in the recommendation...
It was not, again, the recommendation was not that simple. There were areas that they said should be a no zone that went all the way out to the ocean.
But we're going to come back at a different time.
We'll be back very soon with the southwest quadrant. We're just looking at the northwest quadrant tonight.
So we're basically revisiting the whole situation with VRDs.
Well, we're looking at where VRDs should be allowed as an outright use in the northwest quadrant tonight.
Okay, tonight, but when we're going to revisit the southwest quadrant, and then I remember an issue that was kind of in the area of TAP, but in the, I guess it'd be the southwest area, or southeast area of TAP, down low around, I guess it's what, 40th, 42nd, there's a new housing development up there.
Bayview?
Pardon me?
Bayview?
I'm not sure of the name on it, but I know they were upset that they weren't going to be part of the...
Yeah, but that's for later.
Another night.
We're not doing that tonight. We're only looking at Northwest.
Well, when we looked at it before, we looked at the whole package.
Right.
And now we're taking parcels of it, and I don't understand that.
Again, the reason we're doing it quadrant by quadrant is because we anticipated a lot of testimony, a lot of concern. I want to be in, I want to be out, or whatever. And we're trying to do it piece by piece so that we don't spend all night on the hearing, and rather we can do it in a few hours at a time.
We're not going to revisit the issue. It's just looking at the map sequentially.
But it sounds like we are. If we're doing the northwest quadrant, then we're going to do the southwest quadrant, and then there's going to be another one coming up. It sounds like we're revisiting.
Right, but we're going to be hearing testimony from people tonight, and you're going to have the opportunity to listen and say, well, I agree with maybe their portion should be in or it shouldn't be, and this, that. But and what Richard's saying is, do you want to do that for the entire city tonight? Or are you more comfortable taking this little bite right now and talking about this portion?
I'm uncomfortable with taking a small bite when you should be looking at the overall issue. I'm uncomfortable with that.
Duly noted. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, okay, Jim, first, please.
What did the council, I thought the council approved a certain thing about the VRDs. What was their approval from the council?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Didn't they approve a certain amount of this approval for the VRDs already?
They've approved the VR zone.
Right. They approved the VR zone, but they didn't put it on they didn't map it, so it's not on the ground anywhere. So this is the first step in mapping it.
Okay.
So this would be the first area it would apply to.
Okay, then in the mapping, the VR zone, I take the 360-day zone, full-time rental.
If it's in the VR, an area is put in the VR zone, it'd be 365 nights would be allowed in the VR zone.
Be an outright use.
Outright.
It's the same as an RC or a GC or any of the specialized zones that Richard mentioned.
Right, they're not touched, right? Just the R1.
So Richard, the substantial difference, other than changes in the map, is there is no zone in this proposal.
Right. There is no zone. There's no area, no residentially zoned area where vacation rentals would not be allowed.
Right.
There would be some areas, the new VR zone, where they'd be allowed outright, unlimited number of nights. In the R1, the remaining R1 zone, they would be allowed as an accessory use.
Thank you.
Richard, everybody in that quadrant that you've specified and within 250 feet of them have gotten a notice to come here. So if we had a resistance to being changed into the VR zone, they would have had an opportunity to be here tonight.
Tonight, and also at the city council. The city council is scheduled to consider this next Monday.
You don't have to make a decision tonight. If you're not comfortable, we can hear as much as we want.
So then we've completely removed the no zone to get everything cleared.
There never was a no.
There never was.
Right.
It never existed.
The existing VRDs
Never existed.
are in the R1 are going to be basically allowed 180 days if they sign up for it. Is that true? Is it an accessory use?
Existing ones essentially could get 180 days. They might be able to approve that they're entitled to more in some cases.
If you want to sign a settlement, you can get 180 days, and we don't fight about it. If you want to fight about it, we set it up that you can apply for a vested rights or non-conforming use verification process. It's a quasi-judicial process.
Define settlement, so I understand what a settlement is. Is that a 5-year?
It's like a safe harbor. It's just for the life of that VRD, you can operate 180 days, 180 nights. So, and right now, all VRDs go away upon sale. The approval ends upon sale. So no, we didn't actually change that.
So in the R1 zone, someone that does not have a VRD right now will not ever be able to get one. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. In
That's
the R1 zone, a person can still get a vacation rental dwelling, no matter what's done with the VR zone. In the R1 zone, someone in the R1 zone can get a vacation rental dwelling license and permit as an accessory use, not as an unlimited number of nights.
It says what's on the
as
books.
An accessory use, which is exactly the right they have now.
Except that number's been defined.
No.
No. Okay,
There-
so...
There
right
has
now-
been a number defined, in that the council set up an expedited process and said, if you want to agree, so you own an R1 lot, you don't have a VRD now, if you want to agree you'll rent only 30 nights a year, you go straight to the licensing line. You don't even go through the land use process. You go straight to a license. If you don't want to agree to 30 nights, then you can submit a land use application as you do now, and you request a number of nights, and you argue that the number of nights you've requested is incidental and subordinate to your use as a vacation home, and then you go through the process. So there's two ways to go. One is you just agree 30 nights, you go straight to a license, and the council has determined that 30 nights is a number which is incidental and subordinate to your main use. That
what I just
is
said.
not, however, the only number.
And if they are rejected on their appeal, the consequences are?
Well, as in any land use, we have a discretionary land use standard of accessory use, which is defined as incidental and subordinate. You propose, as you are required to in a land use application, how you meet that criterion. If you get approval, you get approval. If you don't get approval, you have the right to appeal. I believe those appeals go from the planning director to the planning commission, and then I believe the council has the right to call it up if they want, or it can go straight to LUBA.
You still get the 30 days no matter what.
Well,
If you're denied, you get the 30 days.
You can get 30 days, yeah, without arguing, yeah. And you can
Okay,
always
but just
come in
wanted
and
to
ask
make
for
sure
the
we're
VR.
clear on that. Okay. Any other questions?
No more man now.
Thank you. Okay, now is the time for public testimony. First, I'll call the names of those who have signed up to speak on the sign-up sheet located at the entry table by the door. After that, I'll ask for show of hands by any who did not sign up and want to speak. Finally, I will ask for testimony from other public agencies. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. If you're speaking for a group of people present, your time may be extended depending on the number of people you represent, but your limit will be 15 minutes unless the Planning Commission extends the time. Please advise the chair if you are speaking for other people. If the planning commissioners have questions of you, we will wait until you finish speaking and then ask our questions. Time spent answering our questions will not be counted in your time limit. Please come forward when your name is called and state your name for the record. If you want a copy of any decision made by the City Council, be sure you have provided your mailing address on the sign-up sheet. If one person is speaking for a group of people, individuals in that group do not need to repeat the same testimony. Be sure to speak directly into your microphone so that your testimony is recorded. And I'll just, because we do have a few people who will speak, we did change the procedure just a bit, so you do not have to give your address, okay? It was more of a safety concern that, hey, here's my address and I'm not home. So you don't have to do that anymore unless you want us to send you something, but you can just give that in writing too. Claire? Okay, this is my first sheet. Elizabeth Rogers?
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Rogers, and I reside in the northwest area.
Ms. Rogers, I'm sorry, you are speaking so softly. Could you maybe just pull that? You can pull that microphone down to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Rogers, and I reside on Northwest Jetty within a proposed zoning area. I'm not opposed to vacation rentals. I am, however, opposed to the zoning area that's been proposed. My neighbors and I did not buy into a vacation rental area. We purchased our property as single-family dwelling with plans to live full-time and to retire within the community we love. As full-time residents, we aid the health of the community's infrastructure by buying local, working and owning businesses in the community, as well as caring for our property. We are families and neighbors that borrow sugar, share meals, and visit with each other whenever one of us is ill. The proposed zoning changes do not take in consideration future taxes and property values for the current residents. I was told by the tax assessor's office that the answers to these questions are unknown. How would you feel if your neighborhood was going to be rezoned? How many of the decision makers live next to a vacation rental? Have you ever been woke up in the middle of the night by yelling, car doors slamming, and the sounds of firecrackers year-round? How many nights do you not sleep because people are carrying on in an outdoor hot tub until 2, 3, or 4 o'clock in the morning? People do things in a vacation rental home that they would never do in their own neighborhood. Why should a residential area be subjected to such conduct? We already have people outside our community walking the residential streets all hours of the night, some just walking to the beach and others drunk and loud. Why would we want to bring more of this kind of activity into our residential community? My neighborhood does not even have an ocean view. From Northwest 26th toward Northwest 21st, that area is viewless. And the additional homes behind them from Jetty on Northwest Inlet Avenue further take any view that could be possible. Look at the design of the homes. They're not vacation homes. They're family and residential homes. I would recommend keeping the zoning vacation rental community from 26th and Northwest Jetty toward the casino, where the ocean view is available and most of the current vacation rentals currently reside. Taking our current residential neighborhood into a vacation destination is not the answer to our city's future.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
No? Questions?
No.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Does everybody understand the difference between 26 moving toward the casino as opposed to 26 and moving towards 21st?
We do have the maps.
Have you driven that area?
Thank you.
Can you stop by here and show us on the map?
You bet.
Can you come over? No, I'd like you to show us exactly which, to make sure we know.
Okay, I'm sorry. You guys good there? 'Cause yeah. All right. Dan.
If I can just tell you what she pointed out on the map was west of Kiel between 21st and 26th, which is that, if you have the map in front of you, it's that first, the sort of the southeast-most blue block.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Let's see, that was 6555. Oh, boy, I am sorry. Rich Catlin?
It's gone.
Okay. Oh, that was on 5. Sorry. Number down. All right, thank you. I apologize. Diana Hinton.
6-1.
6-1. See, that's what I was asking you guys. Okay. Leslie Olson. Olson? All right. I apologize, folks. And Diana Dunlap.
Thank you. I'm Diana Dunlap, and I would like a few extra minutes because I'm talking in behalf of myself, my husband, and my parents. We have a beach house on Northwest Jetty that's located in this area. I'm awful at public speaking, so I made myself little notes. Our house is right along the ocean. We've had it as a VRD for almost 20 years. We believe it's been well maintained and well run. It is very popular. We have the same guests year after year. We hope that we are a great neighbor. We don't hear from Timothy Novak hardly ever, which is a very good thing from my understanding. So we would like to see this passed, because in our experience, we've not had, I guess, been under a certain number of nights limitation. And I guess maybe to talk to some people, perhaps like the lady that just spoke, just because maybe the VR zone says you can have the 365 days, I don't think you really can expect that. I think our house is very popular. And in the time that we've been looking, I think rarely do we go up above maybe 230, 250. And we're oceanfront with 20 years of clientele. We do own this as a family. My mom has a very much dream to pass this along in generations. My parents are staying there right now. So we probably are the epitome of what that vacation rental is supposed to be used, both for us personally as a family and then for other people to enjoy as well. I have had the experience of living next to a full-time neighbor who did all the things that she described, and they own their house. I mean, there's nothing you can say. So I think there can be people who misbehave, whether they're a rental, whether they're nightly, monthly, or just own their home. I would hope that that's looked at separately, and if you have a complaint, let's deal with it as neighbors. So anyways, we're in this zone, just down from the casino. So I think I would love to see this passed. I think we fit right in it. And I don't know if anyone has any questions for me. We're kind of the best case scenario, worst case scenario. We have a very large home that could be misused or mismanaged. But for 20 years, I think we've done a nice job. And we are surrounded, I think, by other VRDs. So if there was going to be a problem, I think maybe our area would be it.
Good.
No?
Questions?
Yeah.
Getting under the time.
Well, there you go. And we don't hear from Timothy, which is a good thing.
Always
Thank
a good
you.
thing. Thank you. Okay, unless I've misread this, which is very possible, anyone else speaking on this that's signed up? If you'd like to speak, please come forward. No problem. Come on up, state your name, please, and remember the microphone.
All right, thank you very much. I will be brief. My name is Gary Patterson. My mother owns a home on Jetty down by 39th, so at the far north end of your zone. She bought it a number of years ago. Her intention was to retain it as a vacation home, and she bought it there specifically for the opportunity of quiet enjoyment. I have been to her house a number of times. I thoroughly agree with what the First Lady was talking about in terms of, unfortunately, what some vacationers are like, and fairly consistently. My major concern in creating a vacation rental district at all is that it opens up from what appears to be primarily a 30-day to occasionally more than that to basically a hotel district. The opportunity is there to rent, as I understand it, under a VR zone, 365 nights a year. That will just compound all of the problems that are associated with vacation rental dwellings anyway. And I am firmly opposed to that. Thank you.
Question? Thank you. Anyone else care to speak? Hasn't signed up? Yeah.
My name's Carolyn Plummer. My company is Pacific Retreats. And the concept of the VR zone parallels quite closely with the consensus group recommendation, and which I was on the consensus group, but with a couple of exceptions. I'm concerned about that big piece of RM property between 12th and 6th. There are motels in that area. There are, I don't know how many vacation rentals at the present time, but is there anyone here that could tell me, with the vacation rentals that are in that area, if upon sale of the property or the death of the owner, how many vacation rentals would be lost if they were forced to drop down from the 180 days, assuming they accept the settlement, and they would be forced to drop down to 30 days, which to me, for a lot of people, is just not worth the trouble. So I would encourage you to find a way, if possible, to make that area a VR zone and somehow retain the right for people to build multifamily units as well. So that's one concern.
Carolyn, I'm sorry to interrupt. May I just ask, can you give me those the streets again? I've got 12th through 16th?
Northwest 12th to Northwest 6th.
6th.
Going south.
That's not.
Right.
I don't have a map of that here.
I think that those are the streets that you indicated, Richard.
Yeah. I can bring it back up on the, if you want, but it's an area of RM zoned. It's a mixture of multifamily and single-family homes there.
I appreciate that. And I don't want to play the sympathy card. It's difficult for me to read those up there.
It lends, that area is so near the Dee River, which is really the center of all activity here in town. I mean, any events, any kite festivals, anything like that. If any area should be a VR zone, to me, it would be natural to be within that area, so it just seems like such like a sore thumb sticking out of an area like that should obviously be a VR zone. So that's number one. And secondly, getting over to the question of the settlement offer. No one mentioned what happens if the person does not accept the settlement and they do what Mr. Apicello said, and that is apply to the city to have more nights and have an opportunity to prove their case. I think the public needs to know what happens if that person fails to prove his point. And maybe Mr. Apicello will outline that. What happens?
Please, if you'd like to.
Not really the issue here tonight, but I think it's been made pretty clear through the process that if you sign a settlement, then that means we've settled the case and there's no prosecution. If we haven't signed a settlement, then there may be prosecution. So it shouldn't be a surprise that if you haven't signed a settlement, you're subject to an enforcement action.
I've got a question, Richard. And if they apply for rezoning into even though those areas aren't currently called VR zone, can any individual property owner apply to be put into a VR zone?
Yes. Anyone who owns
anybody
property
could actually apply to add themselves to that zone.
The council created several options and alternatives, the VR zone being one. Okay. It's an option available for property owners. Yes, you could wait and see if the city wants to initiate a rezoning, but if you as a property owner can apply now, because the ordinance is effective, to rezone your property to VR.
It's my understanding if you fail in your efforts to get more than your allotted nights, you basically lose your right to rent. It doesn't go down to 30 days. It doesn't. The 180-day offer is off the table. You lose your right to rent. Is that right?
If if you do not accept the settlement that has been offered, you are subject to an enforcement action, or enforcement action under the code and under the existing code, as well as under the ordinances that were adopted that are not yet effective. Under both ordinances, the existing ordinance and the adopted ordinance that's not effective, you're subject to land use revocation and license revocation for violating the assessor use
Thank
limitation.
you for answering my question.
It doesn't make a difference if you submitted an application for vested rights or nonconforming use determination. You're subject to that process right now.
Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you. Appreciate
and
that.
validating my statement. Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple for you. I really appreciate your knowledge on this, because I know you've been nursing this for
Thank you.
10 years plus.
We're in our 30th year of business and probably our the issue first came up seriously in 1986, so.
Yeah, you go way back. And I know that area you're talking about, and I don't think there's maybe more than 40 R1 houses in that area. It's not that big an area because it's buffered up by businesses on both sides.
Right.
But I'm more curious about the area that Liz was talking about, up there on 21st, and the consensus that the committee had on not putting that area into the VRD program. Can you go back on your knowledge and edify me a little
Well,
bit?
the consensus group from 21st to 26th recommended that the yes zone be not along the middle of Jetty, but the street back from it, which is Keel, from Keel west in that area.
From Keel Street West on 21st and 26th, they recommended that to be in the VRD.
If I remember correctly.
Why didn't they go to the east and recommend that area?
I don't think we did.
Was it because there was a lot of residential people that lived there?
Well, the lady made some really good points. Certain areas of this city, and I have always felt this way, really don't lend themselves to vacation rentals, in my opinion. But again, the whole consensus process was a matter of compromise. You know, at the end of the process, I wasn't 100% satisfied. I don't think anybody was. In fact, the Professor Burke, who was the conflict resolution expert that led the process, he said, if anybody is 100% happy when we're done with this, we haven't done our job, because it means we haven't compromised. So that was part of a compromise. Anything else?
Any questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak? Hasn't signed up. Now is your chance. Okay. Thank you. Any comment from representatives of public agencies? None. Written testimony was included in the published meeting packet. This includes letters from Lee Selsky, Gary and Marty Moody, Philip and Elizabeth Tanner, Penny Kimball, additional letters tonight from Maureen Gallagher, Gordon Hanna representing Lynn Baxter. Okay. So now I have a note here at this time to determine if the public hearing record should be closed or if there's sufficient time tonight for the commission to deliberate and make a recommendation. If not, the hearing or the record may remain open and be continued to Tuesday.
I recommend that we close the hearing on this.
We have a discussion.
Okay.
Well, we don't have discussion until we decide what we're going to do, I guess. We either close it and then discuss. We need to decide whether we're going to close it or keep it open.
I second the motion to close the hearing.
Was that a motion, by the way?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. Thinking something else. Okay, then we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing at this point. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Are
Okay.
you also going to close the record?
Oh, I apologize. Then we need a motion to close the record.
I recommend we close the motion, or close the record on this motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now's the time. Deliberations.
Well, I'll put my foot out there first.
Please do.
I'm just a little disappointed that it's coming to us in piecemeal. That just really bothers me. And also, when we looked at this issue the first time, and we looked at the Census Committee, we tweaked it just so ever lightly, and we were all in consensus on the way we tweaked it. Now they're coming back and asking for a large chunk in the northwest quadrant, and who knows what's going to be in the southwest quadrant or down in Taft. So I'm against this proposal. But I do know the area where Caroline's talking about, and that's something we might want to consider in the future, because that is very small area, and there's really nothing as far as residential houses, neighborhood in that area that she's talking about. So I can understand that area. Maybe we should have looked at that the last time when we visited this thing, but putting that whole big group in, I know those houses up there, and they're single-story houses. A lot of them don't even face towards the ocean. They face towards the east, and I just can't see it being a BRD area myself.
Where's that at Kill, or what are you talking about?
Yeah, right now is what it sounds like. It's everything east of Kill in this area, whether it's, I don't know if we go
21st to the 26th.
Yeah, is pretty much going to be put into the zone for VRDs.
No, east of Kill looks like it's staying R1.
Goes to Lee.
That's east of Lee.
Goes over to Lee.
Well, the east side of Kiel is R1, the west side is proposed VR zone.
Right. But so Kiel is on the east side.
And I guess I'm going to interrupt. This is why I'm kind of concerned why we closed the record and the hearing, because now we're talking about something that we should have been talking about when the record was open, and we're coming up to a decision to forward this or not forward this. So we either have that choice. If you don't like what's going on, then we can't forward it.
But it was pointed out to us.
I appreciate that.
Existing areas were.
Right, and I appreciate that, but I'm just saying, you're not satisfied with it.
Mr. Chair, if I can say, you can forward it with recommendations for changes.
Okay.
If you choose to.
Okay.
Well, it's our deliberations that we can tweak this right now and forward it, or we could just say, no, we don't like none of it.
That's my concern, yeah.
We can tweak it any way we want and then recommend it to council. I mean, so, like not having issues with part of the RM. I mean, I know there's a lot of, actually, the one off of 26th I was talking about, there's about 5 or 6 vacation rentals in there right now.
Right.
There's condos that get rented out in there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm having issues with the VR, or the RM zones. I know between 12th and 6th, there's actually quite a few houses that are vacation rentals right now.
Well, how would you feel about forwarding it as is with a recommendation to reconsider the RM zones, putting them in VR?
I'm still having a problem with that part on Kiel, too, because on the west side of Kiel, I know of maybe 2 VRs, vacation rentals. I mean, why do we, it's pretty much all residential there. I don't even know why it's included.
Right.
I'd take that out.
I got to agree.
Well, it's the same thing we did on Southwest Coast. We put the west side into the VRDs, and we took some of the houses on the east side out, and then we made some adjustments to that proposal when it came through originally, that we took some of the houses down by Canyon Creek, and we took that back a couple of blocks because it actually boarded up on the public greenway. So we figured, okay, well, let's put them in that area. But again, I think we're getting back to revisiting this piece by piece, and if we're going to look at this thing, I think we should have all the pieces of the puzzle in front of us.
Then what would your recommendation be?
Well, right now, I would reject this proposal because I don't want to see this small part done, and then come back and do another part. I'd rather see it done all in one context. And then, we come back and tweak it here or tweak it there. But
And then those with concerns about the different areas, would you want to reject this based on that?
If we can't tweak things enough the way they need to be tweaked, yeah, I'll reject it.
Is that kind of a consensus here?
This is here, reject.
I would point out that the RM is not part of what was advertised. You've proposed rezoning R1 lots to VR. If there's a desire on this board to ask the council to consider initiating changes to RM zone property, then you could make that motion and make that recommendation that council consider that. But you've already heard from Mr. Townsend that the reason why staff wasn't doing it is because it's considered a down zone. If those property owners were willing to sign an application, it's possible the council would initiate it since they were signing off. But without their sign-off, I don't see the council initiating a downzoning of property from RM.
My problem is the size of that area, the VR zone in the northwest. I mean, I'll go back, that's until Rhodes Inn, that was the most expensive area of town to live, was in the northwest here. And I have built well over a dozen homes in that area, and all but one are either full-time residents or, I mean, only one of them ever rented his house out. And that's just kind of destroying those neighborhoods I know were set up by people that are partially affluent, and I just don't see making that whole thing all the way back to Lee VR zone. And what we're doing is commercializing that whole area. Basically, it's, you know, if you can rent it full-time, it becomes commercial, it's like a motel.
But we did send them notifications to show up at this meeting and say something. And the one lady did, and she had another person that supported her comments, but the rest of the people didn't. I mean, if they live here in town and they were given a notification that we're going to have a hearing about the possibility of putting their house into this zone, and they don't even bother to come down here.
Well, maybe
I didn't see
we're not.
notification, but
I'm going to have to, and I understand your thoughts on that, but I know that there's just, sometimes you just can't.
Well, and there's also, if it says, I didn't
paint a big broad brush on that.
Yeah, if you get the notification as VR zone and it doesn't say VR zone equals 365 days a year rental, and they don't know that, then that's another thing, you know, if that was explicit in the notice or what. But I know a lot of people in that area that would object to this wholeheartedly.
Well, and I understand. I guess I'm just going to throw my 2 cents worth in on this, is that's nearly impossible.
Right.
To turn over a house 365 days a year.
Right, well,
It's not
right
possible.
But what it's going to do is bring more, from my point of view, it's going to bring more investors in that'll buy those houses up, because you can make good money on 180 days in this town.
And we still have the prohibition on more than one. You can
Right.
own a single property as an owner, so.
Is that true in the yes zone?
I believe we still have that. I'm sorry, you going to speak in the microphone?
Yeah.
Not in the VR zone.
Not in the VR.
The VR would allow multiple?
VR will be a commercial zone under the definition.
And will allow multiple ownership.
Only the residential zones are limited to one.
Got it. Thank you.
Let's see, it becomes commercialized. Really different and really high dollar piece of real estate to do.
Well, then I guess I get back to, do we want,
I would like to support our colleague's argument about the people showing up for the hearing. When we were talking yes/no zones, we had 65, 80 testimonies. Tonight we have 2 or 3. So it seems like, I mean, based on just that alone, perhaps staff has come up with a proposition that the population doesn't find objectionable.
and we can draw all kinds of inferences from anything. We could also say that they just have given up and have decided their voice doesn't count.
Part of my job as a planning commissioner is to draw inferences from testimony or the absence of testimony.
I absolutely understand, but we can't, never mind. We're not going to get into that.
The holiday season too, look at it that way.
It is, yeah. So anyway, guys, I'm not picking one side or the other. I just want to make sure we're not painting with too broad of a brush here. So anyway, we kind of were moving towards a rejection overall, or rejection with recommendations. Guys? What's
Yeah,
your
if you have specific changes you would like to see, that could be, a motion could be to approve it with this change or that change or these changes or whatever, depending on what you want to do, or to approve or reject it in its totality, too. You also could.
Want to just, I'm looking for some guidance, guys. We're going to need,
Well, if we don't like this, let's tweak it.
you want to do that tonight?
Well, I
Oh, we still
myself
got-
don't like it because I think we should look at the whole package.
Okay,
You know,
noted.
northwest
So
section
reject.
and southwest, so I would move to reject this proposal.
Reject this proposal.
I disagree. I like the small sections that we can concentrate on instead of overwhelming.
Okay, but that's not the question. The question is, are we going to accept
Well, I was commenting with...
or reject with modifications or modifications or...
No, he was just reacting.
No, and I get it, but I'm just trying to move us forward to a vote here. So that is my job, is to come up with a motion
I move we accept the proposal
as written, no
As
modifications.
as written.
There was a motion to reject, and I didn't hear a second, so I think you better,
Have a motion to reject?
Yeah.
yes, Mr.
Was that a
Rice.
Here
That-
is a
I was
motion.
trying to find the phraseology in
Here, a motion, but
the motion, so I was actually moving to reject
I apologize. So you were making a motion to reject in totality?
in totality.
We have a motion to reject in totality proposed amendments here. You have a second? Hearing none?
So is it my turn?
It is your turn, sir.
Thank you. I would move to accept this proposal as written and move it forward to City Council.
We have a motion to accept as written to forward to City Council. Dying a horrible death. We move forward. What is the council's pleasure on this? Or commissions? I'm jumping the gun.
Mm-hmm.
All right, give me a couple of weeks. All right, guys. So we're going for a rejection with recommendations. Someone's got to give me something. I'll do it for you.
Yeah. But we have to make the recommendations first.
Well, we got to
before
do something tonight. So
Well, we can...
we can
don't have to do anything.
We don't have to do it. So then we want to just shelve this till next time. Let the new group take it over. Or
Yeah,
what do we do?
let's Shelve it.
If I can interject a little bit here, I think it's, given the history that you all have on this whole issue, that going back a long time, I really want to urge you to make a decision tonight. This is scheduled for, to be heard Monday night by the city council. If you don't make a decision tonight, this will go over to next year, and some of you won't be here. There will be some new people, so we'll be starting over, and
And thank you. I'm of the opinion, though, that this still needs more work, and I appreciate they need it, but that's too bad. We need to do our due diligence.
No, I concur.
We're ready to right now.
We don't need to be rushed
So
through this.
do I need a motion to table? Is that what
I'll
I
make
need?
a motion to table this till the next meeting.
Meeting at, when is our next meeting? Anybody?
January.
January 6th.
January 6th. Okay, so we have a motion to table this until January 6th of 2015. Do I have a second?
Before you do that, I just want to point out that I believe you have a rule that says if you don't act on a legislative matter that's been referred to you within 60 days, then it automatically goes to the council. So there is a time limit
Good.
that's starting on this.
So it's only 3 weeks away, so. Okay, so we still have a motion on the table to table this till January 6th, 2015. Do I have a second? I'll second it. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes.
Should we have a break?
Ooh, CPA ZC 2014-02, Villages at Cascade Head, parentheses, The Knoll.
Hey, boss, could we
Yes.
have a little break?
Oh, yeah, you guys, I'm sorry. We have a motion to take 10. You guys good to take
Yeah.
10?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll be back in 10 minutes. possible. Well done. Well done. You just don't want to take over the chair here next time, do you? Back in session. It's now 8:07 p.m. The combined public hearing for file CPA/ZZ 2014-02. I'm sorry? 8:07? Did I say 8:08 p.m. The combined public hearing for file CPA/ZC 2014-02 and PUD 2014-03 is now open. I'm sorry, my eyes are...
Those lights are a little bright, aren't they?
Well, I've only been complaining about that since I got here. This public hearing concerns two related requests concerning a portion of the approved villages at Cascade Head Plan Development. The property owner, the City of Lincoln City, requests a change in plan and zoning map designation to open space for the 35.4 acres commonly known as the Knoll. The land is currently zoned R-1-7.5, single-family residential with a comprehensive plan designation of medium-density residential. The second part of the request is to amend the villages at Cascade Head PUD preliminary master plan to designate these 35.4 acres in blocks north, or N and WR as open space. Consideration of these requests will be conducted as a combined public hearing, but individual motions must be made at the close of the hearing and deliberations. The Planning Commission's role in the comprehensive plan and rezoning is to consider the record and any written or oral comments or testimony, as well as information from staff, and may make a recommendation to the City Council, who will hold an additional public hearing. The City Council may adopt the Planning Commission recommendation, may adopt a different recommendation, or may take other action, including declining to make a decision. On the request for PUD Master Plan amendment, the Planning Commission will make a final decision subject to Council approval of the plan and zone change. The Commission must take a few minutes to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the Commission wish to declare an ex parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias in this matter?
I have a conflict of interest. I live within the notice area, so due to the Planning Commission rules, I must excuse myself from this.
Did we say this for both parts?
Yeah. Well, because it's a combined hearing, he's kind of out.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Anyone else?
I'll just remind you that...
Please.
I'm sorry to interrupt the script,
please
but
do.
you may not agree with this rule, and in the beginning of the year, we are to review the rules. So if you're thinking you don't like this rule, it's not required by state law, it's just your peculiar rule. So if you want to revisit it, we revisit your rules at the beginning of the year.
Planning Commission will make its own rules.
Planning Commission has adopted rules and are authorized to adopt rules governing their procedures.
Fantastic.
It's not usual to have this kind of a rule, but it's the only place I've seen it. But maybe Richard's seen it elsewhere.
Remaining, we'll remember to talk about this in the coming year. Okay, thank you. Anyone else, by the way? All right. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the qualifications of a commissioner to participate in this matter? Seeing none. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the commission to consider this matter? None. Statements. The following statements are required to be made at commencement of the hearing. Staff will now read a list of applicable substantive criteria for this decision. Is that you now?
That's me.
Okay, thank you.
The Lincoln City Comprehensive Plan goals, statewide planning goals, and zoning ordinance section 17.52.210M, extension of approved preliminary master plan, and Lincoln City Planning Commission final order number 98-17, Exhibit A, zoning condition 11, and Exhibit B, planning condition 3.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you so much. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria previously listed or such other criteria in the plan or land use regulations with the person believes that applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity To allow the decision maker to respond to these issues precludes any action or damages in circuit court. Prior to the end of the hearing, any person who participated may request a continuance to provide additional testimony, argument, or evidence, or request that the record be left open to submit additional written testimony, argument, or evidence. Before the staff presents a report, I'd like to summarize the public hearing procedures which have been adopted by the Planning Commission and City Council. A brochure outlining procedures is at the entrance of the council chambers. Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows: preliminary matters and required statements, staff report, questions of staff, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, those opposed, rebuttal by applicant, requests for continuances or to leave the record open, close of the hearing, close of the record, request to submit written argument, deliberations, and decision. The city has established some time limits. The applicant will have 15 minutes and may reserve up to 5 minutes of that time for rebuttal. After the appellant testifies, any person may speak up to 3 minutes. If the Planning Commission has questions, your time responding to any questions will not be counted in your time limit. If you wish to speak, please write your name and mailing address clearly on the sign-up list at the entrance. Please speak directly into the microphone and begin by stating your name. If you also have written testimony to submit into record, please provide a copy to the recorder. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. The city recently acquired the Villages of Cascade Head property. One of the principal purposes in acquiring that property was to get control over the knoll, which is a relatively low peak, but relatively high for the city, that has a view of, and it can be viewed from just about everywhere in the city. This is an aerial photo. This bald hilltop here, that's the knoll that we're talking about. This is just east of Rhodes End within the Villages at Cascade Head planned unit development. There's a view of the same knoll from the beach in Rhodes End, and a view from the top of the knoll looking south over the city. Villages Cascade Head planned unit development was initially approved in 1996 and modified in 1998. It approved a maximum of 1,829 dwelling units within the entire villages. There are 3 villages, basically 3 phases for the Villages at Cascade Head. Phase 1 is called Rock Creek Village, which is the southernmost part of the Villages of Cascade Head. It's this area down here. There's Highway 101 coming through here, Logan Road in the lower left corner. So the Lighthouse Square is in this area. The Department of Motor Vehicles building is here at West Devils Lake Boulevard and Highway 101. The road that goes into the Villages of Cascade Head goes up as shown here, and it ends now right up here. You can see this yellow area says E on it. That's where it ends. That's Block E. Each of the the 3 phases is divided into blocks, which are sort of sub-phases. So Rock Creek Village is again the first phase. It's got block A prime, A1, A, B, C, D, E, and G, as well as these green areas of parks and wetlands and so on. Phase 2 is over here on the extreme northeast. That's Salmon Creek Village. And Phase 3 is Logan Creek Village, which is this area above the wetland and to the north of Rock Creek Village. That's the 3rd phase. The plan for the Villages of Cascade Head, there's a preliminary master plan was approved for the entire Villages of Cascade Head. Then the way this is set up, each of the 3 villages is to have a refined preliminary master plan. Rock Creek Village is the only one that has a refined preliminary master plan. And then each block within the village is supposed to have a final master plan, and there have been 2 approved for Rock Creek Village. So at this point, what has been approved for the area of the knoll is just a preliminary master plan for the entire villages of Cascade Head. There's nothing specific for no final master plan, or no real refined plan for this area. It has been divided into blocks on paper. It has not been subdivided. The principal area we're talking about is Block N, which is shown up here. Fort Lane ends right here in this area of Block 0. There's this sort of bite that comes out of the village's PUD. That's a quarry that's on the site there. That's in separate ownership. This P11 up at the very top, that is open space that was transferred to the city upon the approval in 1996. It's almost 60 acres of open space. Block N here is in the preliminary master plan. It's about 42 acres, and the plan calls out for 50 ocean view homes, so 50 dwelling units in that block. It's probably the least dense block of all the blocks that are proposed in this PUD. Zooming in a little bit again, we've got so the Port Lane ends here. Again, there's this area. It's hard to see this blue area. It says WR. It's originally approved as a water reservoir site. The thinking on that was that because large areas of the village's Cascade had a relatively high elevation, there needs to be a water reservoir at a higher elevation to be able to serve those areas. In discussing this, and this was the decision on that was made back in 96, 98. In discussing this with the city engineer, she has said that that's actually a very bad location for a water reservoir to serve the higher elevations of the villages, and that there are some better areas to the east that would be much more preferable from an engineering standpoint as well as from an aesthetic standpoint, because anything that would be built at that water reservoir site that's shown here would be visible throughout the entire city. So one thing you can see is this proposed road that goes through. It's the white line running through here. Down here by the E, this is where the existing West Devils Lake Boulevard ends. Someday it's proposed to continue on through, and ultimately the road would loop around and go back down to Salasea, adjacent to Road's End. So what's proposed for the rezoning here is to take this 35.4 acres, which is outlined in black here, that takes in the knoll. It's almost all, it's about 32 acres of Block N, and then the water reservoir site is about 2.8 acres, and that also would be included in the proposed rezoning to open space. The specific area, sort of the boundaries, are based on the trail network that's up in there. This blue line running through here actually is the existing trail. It's hard to see it, but there's another trail that sort of comes through here and connects down to the existing open space that the city also owns. So the whole idea is, or not the whole idea, but a big part of this is to create a connection and a corridor with the existing open space that the city has to the north, as well as ultimately into the Forest Service and Camp Westwind land to the north and northeast. Also, one of the things that figured in where to draw the line around this was steep slopes. These pink areas shown on this map are slopes over 20%. Difficult to build on. And so we tried to, specifically around the knoll itself, which is this is that sort of bald area you saw in the pictures. You can see it's surrounded by steep slopes. So the specific area, the specific boundaries would leave some of the Block N area on both sides, in particular on the west side, that at some day in the future could be developed for single-family homes as was proposed in the original plan for the villages at Cascade Head. Again, the whole of Block N was intended to have 50 single-family dwelling units, and it's the only area within the villages at Cascade Head plan that calls out specifically ocean view lots. Presumably it would have taken in the knoll itself, the top of the knoll and so on. This still leaves some of the area on the lower slopes to the west for possible future development. And when final master plan is approved for that area, which undoubtedly will be a number of years in the future before that happens. For no other reason than the fact that there has to be connection through the property to the north, which is privately owned, in order to create basically a loop road. Our ordinance provisions right now would prevent development in that area right now because you can only have 18 units, a maximum of 18 units, and a maximum distance of 600 feet. For a PUD, or not for, for a cul-de-sac, and you'd get that distance very quickly from the end of Port Lane down here. It's more than 600 feet before you even get into that property. So there needs to be a connection back around and down into the main part of Roseanne. So that's out in the future. It's just leaving the potential for development on those lower slopes, but trying to preserve the essence of the knoll. What we're looking for tonight is two things. One is a decision. You're the final decision maker on a revision to the preliminary master plan for the villages at Cascade Head to convert the 35.4 acres from being designated for single-family homes to being designated as open space. That's within the plan of the villages at Cascade Head. That's not zoning, that's just the plan for the villages. And the second thing we're asking for is a recommendation to the City Council on rezoning that same area from its existing R175 zone to open space. So from single-family residential, 7,500 square foot minimum lot size, to open space, which would preclude its being developed. And that concludes my report.
Any questions? I do. Just briefly, I'm not completely familiar with the open zone or open space. Does that mean it can never be touched? We can still build some roads in there. We can still
You could put trails in. You can maintain existing roads, and there are none. There can be some very minor development related to open space. In other words, like some interpretive things. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but yeah, I believe there is a restriction on the size of it. The intent of open space is that it basically be available for, hiking, that kind of thing, and for habitat. That it not be developed. There can be some minor facilities put in, but the idea is just that it be set aside for future generations to enjoy.
I can read the list of permitted uses if you want me to.
Please.
So under permitted uses, passive recreational activities such as hiking, biking on designated trails, bird watching, picnicking, nature walks, and other similar uses. Development and maintenance of trails, including pedestrian footbridges in accordance with standards set forth in the Parks Master Plan with a maximum width of 8 feet. Educational activities and ecological research projects only if the planning and community director, only if the planning and community development director authorizes it. Let's see, natural resource restoration and enhancement projects, interpretive displays, removal of timber, rocks, and other materials in established public use areas for purposes of public safety. So no just general logging to raise money. Such other uses as the Parks Director determines to be in accordance with the primary purpose of the open space zone. There are conditional uses. Public facilities limited to nature center, single stall restroom, public driveways and parking areas for uses permitted in the zone, and public utilities and drainage facilities. Those are conditional uses.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm trying to envision that, we take this area, 35 acres, and then we have a 60-acre open space next to it. Is that right?
Right.
We have a 95, close to 100 acres of land there, but use. Deborah and I have been talking over and over about different ways to enjoy those kind of areas, and I just want to, when we say just you can only stay on the path, I don't know how people enjoy 100 acres from a path.
Nobody says you have to stay on the path.
That's what we just said.
No, you can have a path up to 8 feet wide, but you don't have to stay on the path.
I could have swore that's what you just read.
No, I don't believe. I know that there are some areas, like on Cascade Head, when their butterflies are out, you're supposed to stay on the path. But there's passive recreational activities such as hiking, biking on designated trails, bird watching.
Right, on designated. I think
I
might be nitpicking here. I just want to make sure that we don't just say this is.
No.
There's so much more to see and do, and other ways to enjoy that area. I just want to leave it open to.
Yeah. No, bushwhacking's allowed.
Okay. That's just.
Oh, actually, there is an ordinance before the City Council about park regulations, and that governs open space. So there are restrictions on the use of park and open space property. No open fires, all those kind of things. So
right, and I just, I went to a place in Vancouver, BC that is just dense woods, but it has sky bridges, and it has all kinds of interpretive centers, and people can really enjoy the heck out of that area. And I just want to make sure we don't just keep setting stuff aside. Unless you are a fit trail walking athlete, this is as far as you can go and enjoy our land.
Well, I just clarify that we have a park zone and we have an open space zone, and the park zone allows for more active uses. And the open space zone typically is in sensitive areas where we don't want to have too much development. We don't want to have a lot of, like ball diamonds and that kind of thing.
Right.
So we want to keep it very natural. The open spaces were purchased with money that was raised in a bond issue that was passed in the late 1990s, $3 million worth. And in the bond issue, it set out basically the same kind of restrictions that you find now in the open space zone. So, it lists those kinds of passive activities that Richard just read. So, and the remaining portion of that money, about $550,000, went to purchase the villages of Cascade Head, and we consider that this is going to be, sort of the location that we would assign to the open space for that purpose. There are some other open spaces in the villages shown in the preliminary master plan that follow creeks specifically or wetlands, and then there are some small park areas also. But this is designated as, we're proposing this be designated as open space, and that we assign that $550,000 value to this area.
Okay, I understand.
So the question, we bought Cascade.
The villages, yes.
Right.
Okay. Out of that, how many acres?
360.
So now we're looking. Sounds like a chunk that has all of the ocean lots, or at least will constrict the use of all of the ocean view lots through this piece, all of it, right? Because if you're pointing out that slot that's running down Block N won't have a wide enough space to have a road through it ever, unless they buy some land somewhere else.
No. It's wide enough for a road. In fact, I designed it to be wide enough for a road and for normal lots. But you can't have a cul-de-sac in there. It has to connect to up to the north.
Some other land.
Pardon me?
You'd have to buy land north of that, or
No, you don't have to buy it. The owner of the property to the north has talked to us a number of times about potential for development there. Okay. So the idea is that there will have to be a connection through there in order for that part that's
usable.
Yeah, for the city's part to be usable, yeah.
I was just trying to get at the economic value of this piece of property. I favor preliminarily of the knoll, but I was trying to get in my mind how much of the value of Cascade Head are we taking away from Cascade Head in the process of creating the knoll.
It's hard to say, but this piece is also probably about the hardest to develop because of the steepness of the slopes and the elevation. To be able to get water and sewer there you're talking millions of dollars to put into that. So, it's not a simple thing of oh, this is nice land and we'll develop it, because there's a tremendous amount of infrastructure would have to be put in. There'd be very, very high cost to be able to develop it.
Okay. With the designation then of open space, and then the city would be in charge of installing trails, are we required to? And then how does that...
There are existing trails there. There's some basically old logging roads that are there. Some of us live near there and go up there frequently. Access is very easy on foot. I mean, it's a steep trail, but it's wide and open.
That
and
leads
easy
me into
to go
my next
through.
question then, is if the city takes ownership of these trails, then where do we fall within the ADA on that? What do we have to provide?
Not everything has to be ADA accessible.
Okay.
I'm not an expert on the ADA, but like the trail does not have to be made ADA accessible.
If we were going to build something new, some new improvements, we would want at least a portion of those to be ADA accessible. But this is an existing situation for one thing.
No extra liability then on that?
No. And that applies to the other, we've talked about that in regards to the other open spaces too. So if we're going to pave something, we want to make sure that meets ADA standards.
Right.
But there's recognition that with slopes like this, it's not going to be ADA, and there's no way to make it be ADA. If we wanted to put a trailhead at the base someday, then hopefully, our restrooms would be ADA, and we would have a place to picnic that would be ADA. We'd have a paved parking space for ADA, that kind of thing.
Right. And Richard, didn't you say too that there's 90 acres to the north of this 35-acre slot that's already designated as open space?
60 acres.
60 acres. Okay, so
where's that exactly?
This shows part of it up here.
That was always outside of the village's
Actually, it's in the
development
villages.
area.
It's in the villages, but it's never, but it was always proposed to be put aside for open space. So this would just connect,
But it's part of the purchase that we did when we bought the land.
part of what?
It's part of the purchase when we purchased.
No, we already had it. We got it back in the 90s. It was given to the city back in the 90s.
So are there any other areas that we have for open space in this?
In the villages? Yeah, actually, well, if you look on this, this is a good example. All those green areas, they're either wetland areas, there's some park areas, so there's additional open space in addition to what we're talking about. There's quite a bit of it, actually.
A lot of it follows the wetlands.
Yeah.
Or, area that isn't easily developed.
I didn't think there was wetlands up there, because it's such a slope all the way through it.
There's a lot of wetlands in there.
Down at the bottom of the ravines, that's...
And then there's a proposed road, I think, when we took a tour, you showed us an area where is Roads End area was going to be a road that kind of came up?
If you look along, I think we went up Salasy, in Roads End, which is here. Logan Road is just off the map. Actually, let me go. Logan Road is over here. So you come up from 101 and then you start going down the hill into Roads End. Salasy runs up around this way. Where Salasy sort of doubles back on itself, there is part of the plan calls for a road to go up through that way. As you can see on here, and then the existing road, northeast Devil's Lake Boulevard, as I said, ends right here, and it's between Block E and G. But that would, at some point, there's expected to be a connection around into the road off of Salasy.
Well, that's a good idea, so, okay.
Yeah, ultimately there would be a network of roads in the villages of Cascade Head. We're talking about, about 1,800 units, so that there has to be roads to serve them.
Questions? Great, thank you so much. Okay, now we have applicant's presentation.
I'm the applicant, so.
Did that. Okay, guys, I'm just reading the script here. Testimony in support of the application. I guess that's now. So we're going to Diana? I apologize. You? Knew that.
There it is.
And if I remember right, Deanna, you're testifying for a couple of people here, so you're going to have some extended time?
Yes, please. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Deanna Hinton, President of the Roads and Improvement Association, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the Knoll Open Space designation. The Knoll is a Roads End and Lincoln City icon and appreciated and used by homeowners and visitors to Roads End alike. REIA supports the city's efforts to protect this wonderful area as open space. We value its attributes, which are many, such as its environmental benefit to the area, providing wildlife habitat such as feeding and lounging for the elk and deer, and shelter in the nearby trees. It may be of more significance as a unique grassy meadow for the other animals such as the Oregon silver spot butterfly, which is listed as a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act.
The butterfly is also protected on the real cascade head north of the Salmon River. I think we get a little confused there. In addition, the knoll provides water quality for all water systems below its location. This is a significant and sensitive area. It has remarkable scenic value as one can see a full view of the ocean unimpeded. 180 degrees of panoramic vista of the Pacific like none other in Lincoln City. It's a special place on this planet. It provides a destination for many hikers who seek a less strenuous walk. I say that because I can make the walk. Anyway, it greets them with that stupendous view. The knoll provides aesthetic value for those who view it from Rhodes End and from the beach. This is as important to Rhodes Enders as the view from the knoll is down to the beach. Many of us have this view from our homes and have come to appreciate it and depend on it for its scenic beauty. When reviewing and visiting the park's master plan, please include dedicated trails and access points, preferably without the use of concrete. In addition, REIA urges you to expand the open space boundary to include the strip of Village's property immediately to the west. That was that strip on the map. Rather than develop this strip, it should be added to the 35.4 acres of the knoll open space, which would maintain protection for the entire area. To allow housing on this strip is not in keeping with the spirit of the proposed open space. To build in the strip would require a road for access which does not exist today. The staff report states that if the knoll were developed, the traffic impacts and road building would be extensive. The same would be true if this western strip would be developed. To introduce housing adjacent to the knoll would also introduce noise and the business of people's everyday duties of life, such as mowing their lawns, blowing yard debris, starting engines, as well as barking dogs, hammering from building and repair, and other associated intrusive noise. This would not be consistent with the serenity the knoll now provides. Development of the strip would also impact the view from the knoll by exposing rooftops, fencing, and backyards to the immediate view of visitors. Development of the strip would mar the scenic beauty of the entire forested ridge that wraps around the east and north side of Rhodes End and the popular tourist attraction of the Rhodes End Beach. And you all have a photo there. I think there was a better photo that Richard showed you of how steep that slope is. And this one was just, I took it from my phone when I was standing on the beach, but it's just showing you a different view from Rhodes End Beach up to the knoll. And that's the view that we see. Although there are, anyhow, let me see. As stated in the staff report, Lincoln City currently has an abundance of residential lots, and the supply would not be impacted by moving this area into the open space. So again, that's taking that western strip and moving it into the open space designation. We appreciate the fact that the city is trying to recoup their investment in the village's property, but that should not be done at the expense of what the city is trying to protect. And I was just a little curious about one thing. I'm not sure if I misheard or not, but Richard, when you were talking about the reservoir, I wasn't sure if that was also included in that N property, or the property known as the N block. So I'm not, anyway, I was confused by that.
The reservoir property is not part of Block N, but it is part of the proposed open space.
Okay, and I think I'd have to hear a little bit more about that before we would take a stand one way or another. I'm not sure. It would depend on the design. It would depend on what it is, what the reservoir would look like before we actually have something to say about that. But
if I could just respond to that, the idea is that there would not be a reservoir there.
Okay. In that case, that's fine. Don't have to think about that anymore. Anyway, the proposed amendments with our suggestions will protect this lovely area for generations to come. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you so much. Joseph's also? Or Joseph's going to come up?
My name is Joseph Hinton. I'm a full-time resident of Rhodes End, and I would just like to take this opportunity to underscore some of the points in the previous testimony and perhaps speak for some of the residents and visitors who either had no idea this hearing was taking place or did not look closely enough at the maps. I would like to applaud Lincoln City's support for open space and its acknowledgement that such undeveloped land has value as aesthetic and scenic features in the city's landscape as a category distinct from parks, recreational parks. For these reasons, I feel it would be important to extend the boundary of the proposed knoll open space west to the edge of the village's property. This would add only 7 or 8 acres to the area, but add immeasurably to the value of the knoll. One of the primary purposes of the open space designation is to, quote, enhance the city's scenic beauty, unquote. Preserving this western strip, as we call it, would significantly protect the scenic beauty of the knoll as seen from the Rhodes End community and from Rhodes End Beach, popular with visitors as well as city residents. Development in that area would form an unsightly visual collar around the peak and disrupt the long, unbroken forested ridge that wraps around Rhodes End to the east and north. The staff report also highly praises the scenic view from atop the knoll. In my look at maps and contours of the area, it appears to me that the future potential development could be located as near as 100 or 150 feet below some parts of the knoll. If 35-foot tall homes and structures were built on this shoulder of the hill, they would certainly impinge upon the view from the knoll down to the beach below. Another value of open space, according to the staff report, is maintaining wildlife habitat. The rare grassy headland habitat of the knoll does not stop at the proposed boundary of the open space, but continues downslope to the edges of the village's property. The assumed justification for excluding this western strip from the open space designation would be to make it available for housing development. The staff report goes to great lengths to explain that there is already more than enough land available for housing in the city, and that removing the 35.4 acres of the knoll from the land base would have no effect. Certainly these additional 7 or 8 acres of the western strip are not so needed as to warrant the degradation of the open space to provide more housing, and it certainly would not provide the affordable workforce housing that the city desires. And finally, the staff report also states that expanding, quote, expanding city utilities to serve the knoll would be prohibitively expensive, unquote, and that the steep slopes of the knoll, quote, would make development extremely expensive and detrimental to the environment, unquote. It would seem that the development of this western strip would have similar difficulties for 2 reasons. One, it looks to me, though I'm no geologist, that the slopes of the western strip appear to be an old landslide or slump area, which would consist of unstable soils. And 2, there is currently no road access and none planned in the village's master plan, so any future access would have to be through private land to the north, south, or west, none of which is currently within the city limits, and most of which are not even within the urban growth boundary. So in conclusion, I wholeheartedly support the designation of the knoll as open space and urge the Commission to recommend extending the boundary to the west to the edge of the village's property.
Thank you. Else signed up, but if there's anyone who'd like to speak, please come forward.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for doing this. I really applaud the concept of leaving this in open space. My name is Rob Herder. Sorry.
Thank you for hanging around.
Well, this is a great thing for the city. It's a wonderful thing to do, and so I won't go on about it because you guys already know the arguments in favor of doing this. I have to say that I was originally, and I still am concerned, and I just want to express this, the feeling, despite the fact that you all are considering a really good stewardship action tonight, it always seems to me that the Village of Cascades Head has, because it's owned by the city, it seems like a gigantic conflict of interest for all the City Council and Planning Commission and Planning Department when the decisions that need to be made for development there a lot of those decisions can be at conflict of interest with what the city, for example, if the city's investment depends on the success of certain roads going in and so on, are we going to give enough consideration, the same kind of hard-nosed consideration that we would give if it was another developer? So I just offer that as a comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I move that we close the open record.
Hang on.
Close the hearing.
Close the hearing first.
Just a minute, guys. I got one more little box I got to check. Others, including any testimony from representatives of public agencies. Seeing none. Rebuttal by the applicant? Nothing. All right.
Question that I asked Richard. I don't know if it should be asked ahead of time or afterwards. The additional on the west side, I heard it referred to as 7 or 8 acres. Do you have an estimate of what that is?
How large it is? It wouldn't, I think there was something that says 7.4 acres. I haven't measured it, but that sounds about right, or it looks about right, compared to just looking at it on the map.
I just wanted to have that question answered. Thank you.
But that, okay, just so we're clear, because I didn't see anything on a map other than what I have here in front of me, that we're looking at like a flag lot. That what's being asked to preserve that entire portion?
Section.
Right.
Sliver.
Yeah. The westerly.
Goes down into the...
That would be view lots.
Currently...
The gray.
Gravel pit.
Beautiful. Okay.
I'm all for this, but I want to ask a question. Why wouldn't we consider, or maybe the city has more than I know about, instead of zoning this open space, what about parks, or isn't there a different zoning for park area and more uses allowed?
The zoning is different, but this was purchased with open space money.
With the money, so that's why.
So the idea is, and the Open Space Committee strongly recommended using the money to buy the knoll, and it was always one of the really key intents of the open space bond money, was to try to get a hold of the knoll and for open space.
And I have a question then, and perhaps you've already answered this, and I apologize if you did. We've heard from folks who want us to include that sliver. Is there a reason why we wouldn't want to include that, other than the income, potential income?
There's two reasons. One, obviously, is to preserve some of the value, some of the economic value of the villages, and it's just a little bit. It's less steep than the area above it, area to the east of it. If you look on that drawing with the pink slopes on it, there's more areas there that don't have the pink on it, so it has more development potential. And also, it's at a lower elevation. If you go from the end of Fort Lane, you go through the gate, and the trail goes off to the right, which ultimately goes up to the top of the knoll. There's also a piece that goes off to the left that actually goes into that quarry that's owned by another property owner. The quarry owner has an easement for that, but the city owns that roadway that goes in there. It's a fairly natural continuation to keep that roadway going to the north, and it wouldn't be that hard to tie in there. Again, in order to develop that area, that sliver, there would have to be a tie-in to a road further to the north to make a loop rather than just a dead-end road.
Okay.
So basically the idea is to preserve value, and because it has a little bit more development potential than the knoll itself.
That makes sense.
Richard, if we have $550,000 to buy that open space that you propose, would that cover the additional 7 acres if we wanted to include that little sliver in there?
We didn't try to say the land has this much value or something. Where the line is drawn, in a way, it's arbitrary. We tried to do something, it's not really arbitrary, but we tried to do something that was reasonable, again, based on slope, based on the existing trail network there, based on connection with existing open space. Certainly, it could be included, that land could be included in it. It's ultimately a judgment call, I guess. I should probably say I just made my best judgment call, given the various factors, what I thought was reasonable for the knoll.
That before the city purchased the villages Cascade Head, just a few months before, we had attempted to get a grant in order to purchase just the knoll. We couldn't get a response from the owner, but we had tentatively offered $1.2 million just for the knoll. So the 550, bargain. Yeah, it's a bargain. That's right.
Other people's money, whether it's a bargain or not. So.
Well, it's money that for the open space money, is money that the voters voted to spend on open space.
Don't ever want to dismiss $500,000. It's just, it's $500,000. Yeah. Okay. Any further questions? Yeah, okay. ORS section 197.763, paragraph 6A states, upon request, the Commission must either grant a continuance for no less than 7 days or hold the record open for no less than 7 days to permit any participant an opportunity to provide additional testimony, argument, or evidence. Does any person who participated desire to request a continuance to provide additional testimony, argument, or evidence, or request that the record be left open to submit additional written testimony, argument, or evidence? Read below, then go to 16. Because no continuance has been requested or no request has been made to hold the record open, is there a motion to close the public hearing and the record?
Motion we close. I motion we close the record and the public hearing.
We have a motion to close the public hearing and the record. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. And then we go on to 16. The applicant waived the opportunity to submit final written argument after the close of the record as provided in ORS section 197.763, paragraph 6E.
Yes.
You waive them. Go to 7. Thank you for writing this. This is so good. Prior to or during deliberations, Commission may consult with city staff and the city attorney. Do not ask staff or legal counsel for new evidence. The city attorney or staff have any comments concerning legal issues raised during these proceedings, instructions on the applicable law, or legal advice concerning the application of the law to the evidence in the record?
I have nothing except, just remember you need 2 motions.
Oh, for the
zoning and the...
Oh, right, but not the record in the hearing.
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay. This matter is returned to the table for deliberations and recommendations. So deliberate and vote. No, 2 motions are necessary. One concerns the comp plan map and the zone. The other concerns the PUD map. About the plan map and zone change.
All right, I'll start off.
Please do.
Excuse me, I find the testimony very compelling. I agree with the motion and believe we ought to forward this with a yes to the City Council to both motions, as well as adding that slipper to the open space designation.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so I'm concerned about taking a motion right now.
Actually, I wasn't
or
making a
deliberate.
motion.
Okay, yeah, just because I like that.
Voicing my opinion for discussion.
I thought you were.
Was there any other deliberation on that?
Slipper.
Slipper?
The slipper slipped.
I think sliver. Sliver.
The 7 acres to the west of
So any other deliberation? We have one who thinks we should include it.
Not sure if it make that big of a deal. I mean, you got a 35-acre buffer up there, and the other 7 acres could add that. Plus, you add the other 60, you're at 90. City can make some money on it. I mean, that goes to the voters, puts it on the tax rolls. You know, you got to consider those things too.
Oh,
forever.
absolutely, absolutely.
You know? And that's prime property because that's all dynamite view from that little strip. So
Yeah, and that's a consideration I'm weighing too. Is that we do have residential, we do have buildable properties, but do we have buildable view properties? And
that goes on the tax rolls forever. And I mean, it's considering the public out there and the voters. I mean,
Not sure if I should pass this on, but I'll let Richard Apicella stop me when I'm crossing the line, but I've had people talk to me about Cascade Head. General conversation, they're upset that the city owns that much property right now. Right now, or permanently take of that sliver to it.
Yeah, because
and it's not like that land is clear all the way to the ocean anyways. There's already a line of houses and stuff between the ocean, Cascade, and Knoll.
Right.
But as I understand it, they'll have to build a special road in to get to that area too.
right, yeah,
So it
but
might not
that'd be
ever
the developer's choice. But the other thing you remember, like Richard said, that's a low slope. Then Cascade Head, I mean, the head shoots way up, so the knoll shoots up. So I mean, you're still going to see even somebody builds there.
Low
Like
is
you're
a
blocking
relative.
the view.
Low slope is a relative. I've walked on that slope. I don't know if that's legal extra evidence, but it's steep.
But I mean, the other part's higher, though. I mean, you're not going to destroy that
Maybe just
view from the ocean. Yeah.
leave it open so that
Yeah.
could be done, something may never be done, or
And
at some
be
point someone
adopted
may...
later, Ocean.
Yeah, someone could...
Well, it sounds like they have the money now, so, I mean, I think you should apply it when they have the money for it, rather than having to raise more money in bonds to buy open space.
Not we have the money.
Already own it.
Yeah.
Where are we getting a
But
deal?
We own it.
We're buying it from ourselves. 'Cause
Well,
we're
we're
taking
just-
the money
we're
we
taking it
have
off.
there.
300 acres.
It's already there.
Make it ours.
Yeah,
Open
but we're
space.
buying it from ourselves.
Show you in the microphone. That's our deliberation. I've got to say I'm leaning in favor of leaving it as is, and then, next planning commission or someone, or city council can take that up and say, well, we want to include it, but right now I think we've got a good plan to move forward on without a lot of tweaking. That's just my thought.
Agree.
So I'd be looking for a motion to accept the recommendation on the comp plan map and zone change.
I would make that recommendation to accept the comp plan zone change on 2014-02 as written.
I have a motion to have a second.
I will second that motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And carries. The other concern is the PUD master plan.
I would also move that we accept PUD 2014-3, the Village of the Cascade Head, the amendment to the preliminary master plan
I'll second that
as
motion.
written.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, so moved. Master plan must be a final order, and staff directed to return with the final order at a future meeting. Wait, I'm sorry. Recommendation of the Planning Commission will be forwarded onto the City Council. So we'll hold a public hearing on the request on December 22nd, 2014 at 6 p.m. in council chambers. The final decision on the master plan must be by final order, and the staff is directed to return with the final order for Planning Commission consideration at a future meeting.
Do you have a final order ready now?
Yes.
Okay, so when I wrote that, I didn't know staff had prepared a final order
Knew they would.
for
That good.
the master plan, so.
Yep.
And on the issue of the recommendation, the code says when you make a zoning change and your comp plan and zoning map are the same, that I can't remember exactly what section, but the minutes reflect your recommendation. So we don't typically prepare a separate order, although Ms. Chambers pointed out that in prior... You have one? Okay. Sometimes, apparently, we do prepare recommendation documents for signature, but sometimes we don't. But there's an inconsistency between the code, which refers to the minutes, and your procedures, which would appear to require some other written document. So again, revisiting those Planning Commission rules, we might want to make those consistent.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Old business, none scheduled. New business, none scheduled. Reports and comments, Community Development Director.
I have nothing at this point.
You?
Although,
sorry.
I'm sorry, there is one thing. We are still looking for applicants for the Planning Commission, so...
We are shy how many members then?
Sorry?
We'll be shy 2 more?
Just two more.
Yeah, because we have Steve Griffith, who's not here, and welcome, by the way, to Steve for the...
Yeah.
He's my next door neighbor.
But your position and...
Commissioner Davis.
Jim Davis's will be open. And
anyone in the pipeline?
So if anyone who's hung in watching on TV shows that they're interested, so please apply. The application's available on the city website. Also can be picked up here at City Hall.
I would highly encourage it. It's been a lot of fun. And interesting. City Attorney? Nothing. Planning Commissioners?
Nothing here.
Well, I'm going to say thank you to whoever decorated our dais here. It's beautiful. Thank you so much. And just wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
And Kate, thank you for the cookies.
Thank you for the cookies and the delicious treats, and just hope everyone has a very prosperous new year. Public comments on non-agenda items not involving a public hearing. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. All right. Well, with that...
Before you adjourn, we'd need a vote on...
Final order?
On the final order? Do you want to just authorize the chairman to sign the final order, or do you want to go over it?
I think we have to vote on it, don't we? I mean, it's pretty...
Let's just do it then. Let's have it. Do we have a motion?
I move we authorize the chairman to sign the final order.
Do we have a motion to...
I'll second that.
Motion to second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned.